call this meeting to order at 6 o'clock. If everybody can stand and say the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, well, welcome everyone. For everybody at home, tonight we start our budget presentation. So joining us is the Goffstown School Board budget. We have Joe Alexander, the chair, and Frank Hobbs, the vice chair. Thank you all for coming tonight. And we are going to go right into presentation. So if you have any questions, just raise your hand and I will call you out. So Brian, I'll give it to you, or Scott, whoever wants to start.
We'll have Mr. Gross kick it off.
It was funny, as I was saying before, like, Brian and I probably should have discussed like how we were going to do this, so, but we're doing it this way. So, it's always good to start humor in the budget season. So, welcome everyone. My name is Scott Gross. If you don't know me, I'm the business administrator for SAU 19, and I want to welcome the budget committee members and the school board members. And I want to say, first off, say thank you for both boards doing this collaboratively. It definitely helps the administrative staff. Reduces the number of presentations they have to make, and I want to just encourage folks, if you do have questions, please ask. There will be breaks in between in between each presentation. So we're going to start off with the superintendent's budget, then we'll go over the district budget tonight. We're going to then do food service, and after that it'll be Glen Lake School will be doing their presentation. Then there's another meeting on Wednesday evening, also starting at 6 o'clock. You'll get 4 presentations, starting off with Maple Avenue School, then Bartlett, then Mountain View, then the high school, all right? So with that being said, the goal is to go through an overview of the budgets. We're not going to be doing anything line by line. The board will do that when they start their budget reviews on October 16th, but you're getting more or less a high-level overview of what's in the budget. The expected date to deliver this budget to the budget committee, for those of you who are here, is about October 27th, and that's kind of what Joe, you and I, and Danielle talked about. Went over that already. So what is the vision for this particular budget? Obviously, our goal in the school district is to focus on high-quality instruction. That is the number one most paramount thing. And in order to do so, you need very talented staff, educators and staff. So having folks that, an environment where we can attract and retain those folks is mission critical. Our IT director, Stephen Bourget, is over there. So we do want to make sure that we deploy technology that advances student learning. And also on the business side, where we create operational efficiencies and effectiveness to try to maximize the dollars that we spend. Mr. Loring is not here this evening, our facilities director, but making sure that we have safe and clean school buildings, making sure that we're proactive on our maintenance, and that we plan for future space needs is also part of this vision. Maintaining good communication is also a goal for the Goffstown School District, as well as to promote transparency and allow for feedback. For those of you who are in the audience, all of these budget documents are on the website. It is under community, then it says budget files, and then you'll see for FY 24-25. So you'll see not only this presentation, but the entire packet that the school board has, as well as the actual budgets with notes as well as actuals. And then one of the more important and one of the more pressing things that are going on, Brian, we talk about this almost every day, is that we have to develop strategies to address the impacts of all this residential growth that's going to be coming online. So I'm sure as you drive by downtown, we have that mill project. There's another project on Bog Road. There's other planned ones on Mast Road. Just received word that we're going to be seeing potentially one in Pinardville. So there are a total of 4.
So Scott, one of the pieces in terms of priorities, we set out during this budget process to have our staffing levels remain consistent. There are no staffing increases proposed in this budget. So it is likely that we will have staff members that we might move between schools as we get a little closer to the springtime, but there are no net increases in staffing in this budget.
As you can, we all are seeing this in our lives. I mean, we've had, I think it's 8% and then 6% respective inflation over the last couple of years. And we're seeing that in terms of our expenses within the school district, whether that be anything ranging from copy paper to books. I'm looking at Steve and IT because our IT costs have actually gone sometimes higher than inflation. So we are seeing that, and it is definitely is impacting what we're doing. As the superintendent stated, we do reallocate resources within school buildings. And for those who have been on the school board, they understand that, but I wanted to explain it to the budget committee that the school's district's budget is rather fluid, meaning that we might have an opening or a vacancy due to, say, a retirement at the high school, as an example, and we might move it to Maple Avenue to address the situation because we have a lot of students there. So just wanted you to know that. So when you look at these budgets, when you get them, you're going to look at actuals, and the actuals are going to be like, wow, this is a lot higher than it was a year or two ago, and that's because we're addressing the needs of that specific school in real time. It is safe to say that we're still dealing with the impacts of COVID-19 and the remediation that's needed for student learning, also dealing with mental health and social emotional learning. So it's always been part of our priorities, but it's even more accentuated post-COVID, and it's going to continue that way. We have a continued emphasis on mathematics. You saw that last year. We used about $350,000-ish of ESSER grant funds to purchase a new math curriculum, K through 8, right, or higher? Wendy, am I looking at you?
K through 6.
6.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And also, you'll see in this budget, you'll see that we are renewing our reading curriculum, which is part of this particular budget. Schoology is our learning management software system, and that is something that we use grant funds for. Those grant funds are no longer available, so you're going to see that in the budget. And then lastly, we are continuing to use grants to support student needs, our investment in capital infrastructure, as well as school safety programs. Kudos to, I'm going to say, Joe has been very helpful in terms of, he's a state rep. He communicates in terms of with the school on initiatives at the House of Representatives or the state government with respect to school infrastructure funds. We were fortunate enough to get several school infrastructure grant funds for access control systems. Hopefully there'll be another round of those for replacing our security cameras all throughout the school district. So we do try to leverage grants when we can. Sometimes those grants are state grants, sometimes they're federal, but we do leverage those when we can. So what's not in the budget? And I know that our Maple Avenue principal is here because I just saw her before. Hi, Suzanne, and Lisa's here as well, and Jill.
This is Ryu.
Hi, Jill. I know that whenever I go to Maple Avenue, this is something that's, forefront in their minds. I mean, we are very crowded over there, and these new housing units, when they open up, most of them would be in the area that would go to Maple Avenue School. So with that, we do have different options, and these different options have different cost implications, but none of those cost implications are really in this budget. So we have those factored in, but they're not in this budget. Would we have to probably utilize what we talked about before, that reallocation of staff? Yes. We also have what's called a 5% emergency or contingency type of fund, and we talked about this at the school board retreat in June. If we have to do measures where we have to, whether that be putting another portable, moving grades, et cetera, we do have some funds that we would have to tap into to do that, but it's not in this budget. The other thing that's not in this budget is we have been looking at the possibility of a municipal lease purchase, a warrant article, and this is for CIP items. CIP stands for Capital Improvement Plan, and it really is for more of our heating, ventilation, Air conditioning systems, you can use it for roofs.
Technology.
Technology is another big one. And we are looking at that, and we're working with a company right now to do it, to give us a renewed, a refreshed inventory. We know that about 75% of our HVAC units are going to be, need to be replaced within the next 5 years. So that we do know. So far, we've been picking away at it using either the budget, capital reserve fund, but the broad needs won't be met using that CRF or the budget there. We're talking probably in the neighborhood of $2 to $3 million across all schools to get this equipment back to where it needs to be. And then last but not least, the school district did receive a petition warrant article for safety equipment. And that is something that will appear on the ballot in March. Over the next couple of months, the school district, the school board will more than likely hear, I would assume, a presentation from the petitioners. They will then make a recommendation to recommend, not recommend, and then the budget committee will also get that same opportunity to hear the petitioner and again, to make a recommendation to recommend or not recommend. But
And Scott, can we share that we've given the petition to Town Hall?
Right, it's been-
And they
all
have
the sig-
reviewed the signatures to make sure that it's been properly submitted, so we've gone through that process, and more to come on that.
all right, so I'm going to take a little pause here. Are there any questions from any of the budget committee members or school board members?
Go ahead, Stacy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What does safety equipment mean? That's a kind of a general term.
These are a door, they're a auxiliary door lock.
It's $13,000, and specifically the product are called night lock door locks. That's what's been submitted to us.
Okay?
Thank you.
I will share
wait,
with you.
Lauren has the
I just
question.
want to just, well,
Oh,
if I may, Lauren, just give me 1 second to.
Take all the
So
seconds.
I will share with you that when the school board deliberates on this, because it deals with student safety, there is a strong possibility that they will have to go into certain things we cannot disclose with how we, our safety plans. So the same thing might hold true for the budget committee. So I just wanted to prepare you for that. Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Could you just, I know it's not in the budget, but could you say that again? 75% of your HVAC equipment is going to need to be replaced within 5 years? That's
About
on
5
your
years. That's
matrix?
what, according to our own inventory of our systems,
Yep.
we're having an independent company look at them over the next month. And they too will provide us with a report on that. But I'm talking about air handlers, which is, for airflow, ventilation, air conditioning units, which you don't have a lot of air conditioning units per se. This room happens to be serviced by one, but it's mostly HVAC as well as IT and other things.
We're just at a point where we simply don't have the funds to make the appropriate investments into our infrastructure. It's important for the community to remember, these schools are the most valuable asset the taxpayers of Goffstown own. And we have a massive multi-million-dollar capital improvements plan with no appropriate funding methodology to make sure that those pieces are in place for the kids. So I appreciate the work that Mr. Gross has done on this. The question was, how can we expedite and identify these particular pieces of equipment that would fall under a lease purchase option, and to put that in front of the school board for your consideration, to ultimately put it in front of the budget committee for your consideration, because right now, we have equipment that will be entering or is sometimes already at end of life with no mechanism to replace any of it. So I think it's time for us to be more aggressive about taking care of the infrastructure in our buildings, heating equipment, HVAC, our IT infrastructure, all the pieces that are in and have been in our capital improvements plan for years. We simply have not had an appropriate funding methodology, and that's exactly what I asked Mr. Gross to put together for this year for the board's consideration.
All right, so now we get to the numbers. And for those of you on the budget committee, you should have the presentation in front of you, so if you can't see it on the screen. But what you're going to see here, it represents all of the funds. So for those in the audience and on TV, the school's budget is comprised of 3 funds. A general fund, which the vast majority of all of our monies run through that. And that is the fund that is raised by taxation. The second fund is your food service fund, and I know Megan Bizzaro is here. She's our food service director, and she'll be doing a presentation later. And then the other fund is our special revenue or grants fund, and that is, for the most part, money that we get from the state and federal government. Again, that's not raised by taxation, but all of those two funds, the food service and the grants fund or the special revenue fund, they have to be included in the total overall budget as a gross appropriation, and the voters have to approve that. There are offsetting revenues for both the food service and the special revenue fund. But as you can see, our current budget that we're in right now, which includes all of those three funds, is $53,106,400. And then our proposed budget, you'll see is $52,431,868. Food service budget is $1,418,900. Our budget for grants is $1.4 million, and the total proposed gross appropriation for FY25 is $55,250,768. So we're going to go over each one in the coming slides. So this slide represents the general fund only, which is Fund 10. This is the one that the Budget Committee, you will see this and the food service one, but we focus the most of our time, even on the school board, we focus most of our time on Fund 10. You're going to see that there was quite an increase in what's called the default budget. I'm going to go over that in a few minutes. So it was almost a $2.9 million increase from the current budget to the default. And I'm going to explain why that was the case. And you'll also see that there was under a $300,000 net or new type spending. So I often get the question, oh, how come it's such a small amount between the proposed budget and the default budget? Well, in this particular year, I can give you Brian and I can give you a really quick answer. The default budget is a significant increase for a variety of reasons, and out of respect to the taxpayers of Goffstown, we really did trim down a lot of the requests that were made by our administrators of various buildings to try to get it as low as we could get it. So with that being said, I'm going to focus in on the default budget. So the default budget, we operate, it's consistent with New Hampshire statute 40:13 9B. So one-time expenditures are removed from that default. But for example, increases in propane and electricity are not part of the default. They're new spending.
And
However,
Scott, can we just pause on that
yeah,
for a
that's
minute?
something that some districts do
Yeah,
differently.
this
and-
is something that we've explained every year. The majority of school districts will include any heating increases, energy increases into their default budget. We have historically have never done that. We've always treated that as new spending. The majority of school districts don't do that.
That said, special education costs, if they're required by an individual educational plan, mandated by law, a lot of special education costs are mandated by law. One of them in particular, say transportation, they are automatically put into the default budget. So the big question is what's accounting for the default budget and why is it, like I said, about $2.9 million higher than current budget. So over the last 2 years, the voters have approved a teacher's contract and a support staff contract. And by law, voter-approved CBAs or collective bargaining agreements are then put into the default budget. The notion is that the voters approve them, and therefore they accepted the responsibility of the out years. Part of our collective bargaining agreements are health insurance and dental, and unfortunately, this year our health insurance rates increased significantly. I'm going to go over that in a second. We did have some special education increases. We do have students who receive services out of the school district. They're called out-of-district placements. And we do transport those students to those facilities. The state provides for a 5% increase in what those facilities can increase their cost to individual school districts. That's part of the default. And then lastly, you're going to see a pretty sizable increase in special ed transportation. What's driving that is mostly rates, but there's also more students who are requiring special ed transportation, whether it be in district or out of district. All right, so those, you're going to see that, and I'll go over transportation on its own slide. I'm going to again pause here if there are any questions.
Go ahead, Samantha.
Thank you. Why, if other school districts include their energy increases in their default budget, why don't we? Other than we just don't.
Yeah, we've typically had this crazy idea that it seemed like good transparency to include the new spending. That's something that the school board could consider and review. The premise being that we have to have an appropriate learning environment, you have to have the heat and the lights on. But we have always treated all new spending as new spending historically. Scott, anything to add to that?
That's precisely it. I think it's an interpretation. We just tend to take a more conservative interpretation of the default budget and the statute and the language, how it's written. So that's
the reason.
That's the reason.
Go ahead, Retta.
I had the same exact question, and just a little bit more. Does that put us at risk that the voters could say, we're going to just go with the default, and then we don't have the means to pay for essential utilities?
Well, we have to pay for the utilities. We might have to do something with, moving things around the budget. Before, I will say this, is that you'll look at this budget, and this particular budget, this was about the only thing that didn't go haywire on me when I prepared it. So it looked more normal, and I'm going to go over that with you. But if that's okay, I'll just segue to health insurance because that's what kept me up for about 3 nights. So health insurance, we have typically budgeted, so Kate McGrath is our HR director, and we have looked at our historicals over a 10-year period. And we have seen health insurance increase ranges for about 6 to 8%. And that's what Kate usually, when we do our preliminary budget, which we start in August, we put those numbers in. We get what's called a guaranteed maximum rate from our health insurance provider, carrier. And they came back, was it Friday? I don't know, it was about a week ago.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks. And they came back at a 14% increase. That 14% increase represents over $1 million of the default budget increase. 1 million alone. Our dental also, which usually is flat, like 0.5%, 1%, that went up 4.7%. So I asked we had a meeting with our health insurance carrier, and what they're saying is that people put off a lot of procedures in healthcare during COVID, and now, because of that, your rate is based largely on your claims experience, people going for care, surgeries, you name it, and that's driving up the cost. I don't know, I say this, hopefully it's not rude to say it tongue-in-cheek, but sometimes you get like misery, like loves company. So I'm with other business administrators and I'm eating lunch and someone says, oh, mine went up 20%. And someone said 25%. So I'm like, ooh, maybe my 14 isn't so bad, which we all know is 14 is awful. But you're just seeing a lot of pressures on that industry, and you'll probably see the same thing in the market across all industries for that matter.
And historically, our 10-year average has been about 8%.
Yeah, 6 to
increase.
8%. So
when we originally were working on the budget in August, we used 8%, and then when we got the guaranteed maximum rate of 14,
yeah, it kind of throws you for a
Yep.
loop. With that, we saw some modest decreases in New Hampshire retirement system rates for both this year and next year. So as you can see in this slide, it went from a little over 14% to 13.5%. So it helps a little bit because that is all based upon, those percentages are then based upon the wages of those particular employee groups. So as we talked about before about energy, so Our supply costs for electricity have been relatively stable over the last 5 years. We have entered into long-term supply agreements with electrical supply providers, and we have had rates ranging from 8 to 10 cents per kilowatt hour, which is way better than what you're probably getting on a residential side. I know most people are paying probably from 12 cents if you're really lucky, upwards of 15 or 16 if you're not so lucky. So we've been pretty fortunate with respect to that. We've also been fairly well-positioned on propane. Our heating in the Goffstown School District is probably 97% or more. I said 95% propane, and then we have some natural gas at Bartlett School. But we've been lucky because we have been purchasing what's called futures. So Dead River is our provider. They're one of the few companies that allows you to buy a future 2 years out. The school board has granted me the authority to negotiate and to buy those futures. So I've been hedging purchases, and we're averaging about $1.71 a gallon, and more than likely I'll be doing the same type of hedging as we continue. So again, most folks residentially, if you're getting a great deal, you're probably in that $2.30 per gallon range. Not so great deal, you might be up to $3 or more. So we're pretty fortunate there on the propane. So Red, as I was mentioning before, there's some not so good news, but the overall, it's weird because energy is about the only stable thing that I think I'm looking at this particular year. The other nice thing is that we did replace a large percentage of our windows at Maple Avenue School and at Bartlett, and we have seen energy savings for especially heating at both of those schools. And lastly, we're going to monitor our energy usage, and as we replace equipment, so I mentioned before, and I think it was Stacy and Lauren were asking about our HVAC type equipment. When you replace an air conditioning unit that's 20 years old, you're going to get a much more efficient unit, and that will hopefully save us money in the long run. Part of these municipal leases that I mentioned before, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail, but they will use this energy savings of the new equipment as part of the lease purchase pricing. So it tends to work out very favorably for either the town, if they're deciding to do one, or a school district. So as we go further along in that process, the school board and the budget committee, if the school board decides that they want to pursue it, you'll get more information about that. So it'll be probably a separate warrant article.
So Scott, one piece about the municipal lease that we didn't talk about yet that I wanted to make sure that both boards were aware of. We're considering the possibility of a one-to-one laptop initiative at Goffstown High School. As we've been considering that, this would be the funding methodology that we would be looking at. So we'll hear more about that in the weeks to come. I had mentioned this to the school board a couple of meetings ago, and I wanted to let you know that's where we've placed that, should we move forward with that initiative.
All right, so I'm going to pivot a little bit to, we talked a little bit about expenses. I'm going to talk a little bit about revenues. So when we go through the budget process, I like to talk about revenues because they're very critical. Revenues help offset what is the obligation for the local taxpayer. All right, so the school budget, town budget for that matter, they get different revenue sources from the state, some minor cases, federal government. But in our case, in the school district, we receive quite a bit of revenue from the New Boston School District. So New Boston tuitions their students from grades 7 and 8 at the middle school, and then all the grades here at the high school. So they come to our schools, and in return, they pay a tuition rate, which is revenue, local revenue that offsets our expenses here in Goffstown. So it is based upon Goffstown's budget. So as Goffstown's budget goes up, we do expect that we're going to obviously see more tuition revenue, which will then offset ultimately what the local taxpayer has to pay. We also saw an albeit a slight increase in state adequacy funds in this current year and in next year. So they operate on a biennial budget, and we saw about a $300,000 increase in adequacy. The prior year, FY23, we received $10.9 million. This year, next year, we're going to be receiving 11.2. So again, in my conversation, not to talk too much about Joe. So Joe and I, we talk a lot about impacts on local education, and last year, the House and the governor had proposed a budget that would have brought in another $700,000 or $800,000 to offset taxes here locally in Goffstown. So again, we had two branches of the three, and it would have been very helpful for Goffstown. Unfortunately for us, the New Hampshire Senate prevailed in their in the negotiations, and we did not receive that additional $700,000. It defaulted to the Senate's proposal. So, kudos, I think, to Joe and those who tried, but try to get them next time. But again, in deference to the House and Joe, there were a lot of needs at the state level as well. So we got a little more money. We also get investment income from our bank accounts, which last I checked is about 2.5%. So that is not, so when you carry a balance, let's say of $5 or $6 million in your account, you're getting interest on that. That said, I don't expect this future high interest savings environment to continue very far into the future. We'll see. So for those of you who have been buying up, CDs or other things, like, okay, hopefully it'll last for a little while longer, but you never know. We're not counting on that, and I'm not building it into our budget revenues because I just don't think it's something that is going to be sustainable. And if it's more, then it goes back to offset taxes, and that's great. Lastly, we've been using grants for the last 3 years from COVID. Those are what's called ESSER grants. And those, for the most part, have been almost entirely spent or allocated. So we have maybe $40,000 to $50,000 left of those funds, and so those are not going to be a huge revenue. And again, just to refresh everyone's what I said before, anything that we spend on grants is offset by those corresponding revenues. It's a neutral, it's a push.
Scott, before you move off from adequacy, I think those of you who have had the chance to know me over the years, this is a pretty important topic as far as I'm concerned. The bottom of that slide, Scott, on average, state aid received has increased less than 1% each year over 20 years. So all of our costs continue to go up, but over a 20-year period, the state has increased by less than 1% what we receive. Unfortunately, what does that mean? That means that money needs to come from the local tax base. So even though, as you'll hear in upcoming slides, that we have some of the lowest per pupil costs in the entire state, the system is fundamentally broken. And unfortunately, we continue to have this come down on the local property taxpayers because the state continues to not meet their constitutional obligation to provide an adequate education for every kid, despite multiple lawsuits that the state has lost over and over and over again, and yet, where's the money? It's all coming from the local taxpayer. That'll be my probably one and only rant about this budget cycle.
So before you go on, Jared had his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going back to the revenues. Scott, you talked about the investment income from money that's in an account.
Yeah.
One of the confusing things that the Budget Committee and probably members of our community have is we don't hold on to the money that's collected by taxes.
That's correct.
And so could you just articulate, what money is considered ours? Because when we have a fund balance at the end of the year, we're not giving back money to the select board to give back to the community.
No, we don't give it to the select board.
So could you kind of just talk about
Sure.
when we get the money from the town? Because when we only pay taxes twice a year, it's not like we have our own bank account where 25 million is going to hit into that bank account.
Yeah, that's a good point. So the town is the entity that is legally allowed to collect taxes on behalf of the citizenry. The school district, twice a month, I request monies from the town. So most of you on the Budget Committee know Danielle. Danielle's the finance director. We have a schedule where I say on these dates, I need $1 million here, 1.5 here, and then that money then gets transferred into our quote-unquote checking account, which allows us to pay our bills. But as Jared said, we do not get a $25 million deposit like at once. We do it on a monthly basis. It's all based upon cash flow. So we work with the town. They have to make sure that they can pay their bills, we can pay our bills, that they don't have to go into what's called short-term borrowing, because right around the time when the tax bills go out, it's usually the leanest. So we don't ask for a ton of money there because they're still waiting for people to pay taxes. So it's kind of a partnership, in that respect. That said, we typically carry our monthly bills, could easily be $3-4 million at a given time. So our lack of a better term, but our balance on a daily basis is usually from between $4 to $6 million. It really depends. I think Lissa, our treasurer, is here too, so she'd know better too. But we do try to keep that, and that's the interest that you would be garnering, but you're not getting interest on the, on that. So appreciate that. All right. So for those of you who don't know, I mentioned that capital improvements plan. We also have another acronym. There's tons of acronyms in education. This one is called the CRF, and that's your Capital Reserve Fund. Capital Reserve Fund was created many years ago. I think it was about 5 or 6 years ago, and that was for replacement of existing assets within the school district. So this is just a list of some things that have been done using that CRF. If those of you who have not seen the renovated theater at Goffstown High School, we did use up to $300,000 of funding to renovate that theater. It hasn't been done in 30 years. We had to replace the boiler, one of the 2 boilers at Glen Lake. So that was more of an emergency type of thing. We did use the fund for that. Same thing with the fire panel here. It just failed. So we used it for that. And then we replaced an aging tractor that we use for maintenance of both fields and snow removal. We did that as last year as well. And then we did other projects using that. The one good feedback that I will share with the community, as well as school board budget committee, is we got good feedback from the budget committee. Basically, the feedback that we got was like on the theater project, because it was so big, consulting with the budget committee, having that dialogue, something that we'll do and we'll endeavor to do in the future on a bigger project. If the boiler goes, the board is going to do what they're going to do, but we're going to at least talk to you about any type of bigger type projects.
Hang on, Scott. Go ahead,
Yep.
Joe.
Scott, can you just tell us what the current balance is in that fund?
287,000, no, I don't know, hold on.
I figured you'd know off the top of your head.
It is close to that, and it's in your packet, which you don't have, but it's, hold on. The school board has it. You're gonna get it, you're gonna get
not
this
read
when you
ahead.
get yours. It is on page 108. Hold on. I think it was 200 and something thousand.
$284,219.
I was close. Okay.
Thank you.
284.
Say it again?
All right.
$284,219.66.
And I know you say there's no plans right now to spend any of that, but like you said, if sometimes an emergency, you might spend
Correct.
it.
And, the board, as things, pop up throughout the year, like a lot of times, something like, to give you a good example, you might have, deteriorating stairs or something, or you had this issue with the tiles or something like that, it pops up, and then we would, kind of take a look at that.
Okay.
So
But
us-
unfortunately, this
Yeah.
is also one of the only methodologies that we have to move forward with any of our CIP projects. So this was kind of really the rationale behind that municipal lease that Scott mentioned earlier. We've been very appreciative of the support from the community to make deposits into the Capital Reserve Fund, but unfortunately, it's just not enough. If we've got $10 million worth of projects in our capital improvements plan, and we're putting a couple $100,000 a year, we are never gonna get there. We're never gonna get there.
Yeah. So, next up is our use of grants. So we do utilize a lot of grants within the Goffstown School District. Wendy Kohler is our assistant superintendent, and she's responsible for our title grants. I will say, though, that, these grants are helpful to us, but they also have a ton of administrative issues, as you know. So they're a blessing, but sometimes they're a little bit of a curse because we have to account for everything, and there's a lot of regulatory type constraints with that. But there is no tax impact on those. For the last few years, we've gotten what's called ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 grants, but about 50,000 remains in ESSER 3. The school board, you're going to hear a request to use ESSER grants this evening, so a little plug there for IT equipment, laptops for this media center. We use grant funds to support elementary school, special education teacher at Bartlett, tutoring support. These are some of the things that we did use our grant funds for. Mental health counseling, guidance counselor, all those things. We purchased a new math curriculum. Grant funds were partially used for the game field renovation project, along with private donations and impact fees. So that's where we've used our grant funds. And with that, any questions on more of the financials? I'm going to go deeper into financials, but now we're going to start talking about demographics and his enrollments and things
Go
like
ahead,
that.
Joe.
Thank you, Scott.
Sorry
I'm
about that, Joe.
concerned about the use of grants for things that aren't one-time expenses. So my question is, are these grant positions that were funded through ESSER going in the default, or are they going
No.
to go in the new?
No,
the-
they're neither, because we repurpose positions. So everything that we did, it was mostly here at the high school where we repurposed positions where people were retiring, and then we moved positions to other areas.
Okay,
So,
great.
Everything with respect to the default budget is based on what's called a full-time equivalent employee. So as long as we're staying within that full-time equivalent employee, we might have an open requisition of employment, say here at the high school for an example, but through the administration, talking to the principals, we're like, that need is really more at Maple.
Okay.
So we take that position, we don't fill it, and then we create a position at Maple Avenue to deal with the overcrowding.
And we purposely, when we received those grant funds, we didn't want to have that cliff.
Yeah.
We didn't want to have that we add a number of positions and then a couple years go by and then we'd be sitting here, right here this evening, we'd be sitting here saying, we're adding 6 or 7 new positions to the budget. We
And that's-
didn't
right.
do that.
And it's not legal to put it in the default, just so you know.
Okay.
So the only other things I would share, Scott, is when Scott talks about the full-time equivalencies, those are our number of people, but we also sometimes have positions that move in and out of contracted services. So there are certain positions that we are challenged to fill. So examples would be speech and language pathology, occupational therapy. Some of the specialized special education positions, we struggle to find many of those positions. And sometimes, even if we desire to hire our own employee, we're not able to do so, which means that we sometimes move positions into contracted services because we have to buy that as a contracted services rather than hiring our own employee. So there can be a little bit of fluctuation for some of those specialized positions, but overall, the FTEs have been flat.
Yeah. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of
Hang
detail.
on 1 second,
Oh, I'm
Scott.
sorry.
Lauren, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I just like cutting off Scott. I just, thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question about the adequacy. I understand that the state increased the per pupil adequacy a bit. Is Goffstown going to be impacted by the stabilization reduction that's coming?
Not in the next 2 years, but down the road, yes.
So it's a short-sighted, minor, like 1.5% increase, but we'll be losing some of those stabilization grants
It's-
according to that biennium approval?
If current funding sunsets and there's no changes, yes, Goffstown would then lose some of that stabilization money, but Joe said he would take care of. No,
I can't speak for future legislatures.
But it's
yes,
important to understand
Our
that it's not.
understanding is that is accurate.
Yes.
In, I think it's 2 more years
Yeah.
that there would be a statewide reduction in that,
For
unfortunately.
those who were getting it, right? Because not every
Right, I
community
didn't
gets
know where we
stabilization.
fell in that. I know Goffstown might not be a high need high school, right, as far as how they qualify them, but it,
That would be like, we would need like a a 3-hour reality TV show to explain stabilization, so we'll just move on. I
Gotcha.
think. That's, okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren.
So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the enrollment because each school is going to do that. But I want you to look at the bottom line, which is the total, and you're going to see here that for the most part, our enrollments in Goffstown are pretty stable. You know, hovering between 28 to 2,900 students, and that, believe it or not, is kind of bucking the trend in the state. A lot of school districts are seeing their enrollments decrease in upwards 10-15%. We're not. Now, factor in what I mentioned before about 4 housing developments, which probably are going to bring in another 250 units. See what happens there.
And Scott, actually, if you look at the numbers, the school that we have the most
Maple
concern
Avenue,
about is
yeah.
Maple Ave. So despite the fact that Glen Lake can be volatile and incredibly difficult for us to predict, Mrs. Stoyle does her very best to know about kids, to make sure kids are enrolling in kindergarten. It can be challenging, but you can see even our enrollment at Glen Lake has been stable. But if you look at Maple, that's where the growth is. That's where the growth continues to be. And when Mrs. Pishka and Mrs. Johnson and Mrs. Ryu do their presentation on Wednesday, they'll speak more about this. We do have a couple of options that we could discuss with respect to class size at Maple Ave. It involves moving sections of 4th grade to Mountain View. This is something that has been done historically, and unfortunately, we're at a point that we need to consider that again. But we'll get into that a little more.
Yeah.
But apart from Maple Ave, our enrollment is stable, but Maple Ave just continues to grow.
All right, so that's where you're going to see these projected class sizes. So again, you know, Bartlett, the one thing that, for those of you who've been on the tours, the classrooms there are the smallest within the district for the most part, but their class sizes, you know, by and large are very good, even with those square footages. Maple is just a massive problem for us, especially grade 4. And again, Suzanne Pishka and her team will go over that on Wednesday more in detail with you. And again, we're seeing, you know, sustainable numbers at Mountain View Middle School, as well as we don't have traditionally class sizes that we talk about here at the high school because of the nature of the courses. But by and large, Mountain View and really Maple Avenue is our by far our biggest concern. With respect to special education, each year we try to let the board know, and in this case the budget committee and the board know how many students have been what's identified as requiring or needing special education services, and that number is 20% of our students have some form of a special education need, and that is fairly consistent with the state, and I think also fairly consistent at a national level as well. So I oftentimes hear, you know, we do, and Goffstown has a higher percentage of special education students than other districts. That's simply not the case. I've looked at the data and it's fairly consistent with others. Next up is our free and reduced lunch students. Again, the reason why we're talking about special education and free and reduced lunch students is because they are part of your revenue for your state adequacy. So we do want to make sure that we capture the number of students that are eligible for these, because it does, the state then does provide additional revenues for each school district. So again, we have that data for you. Megan Bizzaro, our food service director, does a great job. It's something that is completely confidential. The only person that knows about those applications is Megan, not the superintendent, not me. She's the one. So with that, we do encourage folks to sign up for that, because it does impact our revenues and our ability for grants and other things. So thank you, Megan, for doing what you do.
It would be important for us to point out in that chart, if you look at the 2021, you'll notice that the percentage of free and reduced went down considerably. I would just remind everyone, it was during those years that you didn't have to fill out an application. The federal government paid for lunch programs across the country. Families were not required to submit financial information to Mrs. Bizzaro, and as such, you see that there's a drop in that percentage. So that is, I would say, kind of an artificial drop. people just didn't have to fill out the paperwork. And then you see correspondingly, in 2022, it went up, and from 22 to 23, just look at Bartlett, there was a 5%, almost a 4.8% increase just in that 1 year.
Hang on. Yeah, Nicole had a question.
My question was related. It does look like the numbers 2023 are still a lot lower than they were about 10 years ago. Is that changing demographics? Is it that people just haven't gotten back on board with filling out the paperwork yet? Is this more of a question for Megan?
I think that's a
Megan.
wonderful question for Megan. She will contemplate that, and she'll be ready to talk about it when she comes up.
Yep.
I think really, it's probably a combination of factors. I think that we have a lot of proud people who don't want to fill out the paperwork and don't want help, even though they should be receiving it. I certainly think that that's a factor, but we'll let Megan speak to that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole.
Anything else?
Oh, go ahead, Melanie.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I wonder, and I know that the board probably doesn't have an answer to this right now, but I wonder how the passage of a Medicaid direct enrollments would have impacted the access for students to free and reduced lunch in Goffstown, as it would impact the rest of the students throughout the state. I don't know if Megan has any numbers on that at some point, but it would be interesting to know how many students in Goffstown it would impact.
Okay.
Thank you, Melanie. Anyone else? No? Okay, go ahead.
All right, so a lot of times folks ask us on the school board, like, what are metrics that you use? And there are many metrics that we look at, that the state collects data every year, a lot of data. And one of those is your cost per pupil. So every year, myself and all the other business administrators have to compile a 25-page spreadsheet, which is a lot of fun in the summer. And it really it compares apples to apples across school districts to what are the costs per pupil. So on that financial reporting, we compare ourselves to other school districts across the state. So this is what the superintendent was mentioning before in terms of our prudent use of local taxpayer money and just our overall budgets. Goffstown Elementary School cost per pupil was almost $16,500, the 11th lowest out of 155 school districts. Again, about almost $3,600 less per pupil than the state average. So again, I think we're pretty good stewards of the taxpayers' money, and I think this type of data supports that. The middle school cost per pupil was the 4th lowest out of 61 school districts, about $3,700 lower than the average for the state. And then our high school was the 10th lowest out of 73 districts, about $2,100 less than the state average. So then there was an overall metric for the entire K through 12 system. Goffstown was the 7th lowest out of 162 school districts, or almost $3,400 less than the state average. So that's not something that just comes. I mean, I think we try to be as prudent as we can and look to save money when we can. But with that, there are challenges, obviously, that we have to address, and but the data speaks for itself there. With looking at that cost per pupil, then the next question is like, well, how are we doing in terms of our student achievement data? And this slide basically shows that our state testing scores. And as you can see, almost every school district across the country during COVID had deficiencies as a result of a combination of remote learning, hybrid learning. I'm proud to say that, our school district, boom, we went right to having kids come back. We obviously complied with the governor's orders of closing schools, in March of that year. But we've had a pretty good rebound in terms of our test scores. There's still more room to go, and Assistant Superintendent Kohler obviously is leading the effort along with our school administrative teams in terms of our math and our reading scores, as well as science. So you'll see that You're going to have a reading, like a Wonders program. The electronic access to that curriculum piece is going to be part of your budget. That's part of a 6-year replacement type cycle, and that's in the budget. The math piece, we use grant funds, for that. So what this demonstrates in those 2 slides is that, to keep it kind of simple, is that we're paying a significant amount less cost per pupil, and our test scores are better than the state average, by a decent margin. So it shows that we're getting good value for the monies that we're using. What you have on this slide, I'm
Hang on
sorry?
a second, Scott. Go ahead, Ellen.
Yeah, I'm just looking percent, fine, but percent what? Percent proficient?
Percent proficient.
Yeah.
It is percent
Yes.
proficient.
Yep.
Okay.
Are you all set? Okay, go ahead, Scott.
So one of the benchmarks that is used for mathematics is the SAT here. So those students at Goffstown High School will take the SAT. And as you can see here, Goffstown is in red and the state is in black. And I didn't say anything to Wendy when she gave these to me, but those are Bedford colors, but it's okay. It's okay. I think maybe it looked like maroon when we did it, or is that what it was?
It was maroon.
Supposed
I'm
to
not
be?
sure if there was something
And
that
then
changed
it
when I
came
sent
out
to
like a
you.
bulldog
It
almost,
did.
but
I
it's okay.
apologize.
So that's the story there for mathematics, and then for reading and writing, again, you're going to see for the most part our scores are higher than the state average. I don't think we should be satisfied with just higher than the state average. We always want to be a lot better than the state average. That being said, that's what continually drives us, kind of motivates and creates our decision making. All goes back to those first slides when I talked about our priorities. In order to see success on our scores, success starts by the educators and the staff in our buildings. Creating a safe environment, having excellent teachers and staff translates into student performance. So with all that, that's how it all kind of comes full circle in terms of our budget. So those are that's the overview for FY25, and then we'll go into the district budget next. But are there any questions on anything that I've
Nicole
covered?
had her hand up. Go ahead, Nicole.
Yeah, so it does look like we're doing better than the state average on these SAT scores, for example, but that we are still seeing a downward trend thanks to COVID, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So just wanted to point out that is still a continued need for remediation there.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nicole.
Agreed.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Stacy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is this new math curriculum going to be across all schools, or is it specific to?
K through 6 it is,
K through
including
6.
New Boston.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So that replaces, our new program replaces the everyday math program that we had for many years. So we think that this is an important step forward.
I'm going to miss the lattice method, Brian. I just wanted to share
I'm
that.
not, and
I'm just
not.
kidding, but
Olivia, go ahead.
Was there something implemented for the science program at Mountain View Middle School where there's a shift from 17% proficient to the high 40s from 2017 through the
Mrs.
subsequent
Kohler?
years?
It was actually the same program. We just did a lot of professional development with our teachers to really make sure that
To
they
boost that up.
Absolutely.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
And you had your hand up.
Yeah, one of the things that I also wanted to mention about our new elementary math program, it's called Math and You. It is by the same authors that we're already using at the middle school for our 7th and 8th grade, our Algebra 2, and Geometry programs here at Goffstown High School, by the same authors, which is Big Ideas. So I just mentioned that because it is a really nice vertical alignment that we went to, moving from everyday math to Math and You.
Thank you, Wendy. Anyone else? Questions? Comments? Okay. Moving on to the district.
we're good?
Yeah.
All right. So, for those who are new in the budget committee, or for those in the audience, we have individual school budgets, but then we also have what's called a district budget. And contained in that district budget, on your next slide, are various components that don't fit in. They're more overarching. They encompass all schools. So with that, our regular education, special ed, and homeless transportation are all part of district expenses. They're not broken down by school. A lot of our information technology, our athletics management is a district component, substitute teachers, temporary staffing, summer programming, the school board itself. We have what's called an administrative salary pool. That's how folks get their raises at the administrative type level. Retirement stipends, those are contractual. So for our teachers, for example, if they spend, let's say 20 years with the school district, when they retire, they get what's called a retirement stipend, and then that's part of the district. We don't budget them at each school for privacy reasons, so it all goes into like one bigger pot. And then we also utilize Town of Goffstown services. So again, for those who may not know, Parks and Recreation for Goffstown, Town of Goffstown, they mow all of our fields. They also line, for athletic events, they do the lining of all of our fields. They're a phenomenal partner. DPW plows our parking lots. We do our own sidewalks. We do supplemental plowing, but they're also a great partner. And then there's Goffstown Television that is doing this as we speak. We also use Goffstown Television for our school board, obviously our meetings, but also for communications with the public. So we utilize a lot of these services, and we have a cost-sharing agreement with the Town of Goffstown for those services, and that's included in our budget. And there's an increase in that this year as well. So I just wanted you to know what's included in the district budget, because it's one of the larger components of the overall budget. So with that being said, I'm not going to spend a ton of time. I'm just going to try to look at some high-level numbers here. You're going to see, basically, I'll go right to the bottom where you have about a $700,000 increase in the district budget. I'm going to explain to you why that is the case. Just look at Steve, because he's the reason. No, I'm only kidding. He's part of the reason. I love Steve, so he's part of the reason. Okay, so we are seeing a bit of an increase, a $6,000 increase for the services rendered for GTV and Parks and Recreation. We are seeing about a $35,000 increase in I mentioned before for IT. So we use Office 365 for our devices here in SAU 19, Goffstown School District. We're also seeing licenses across the board. They're going up, whether that be for antivirus, whether it be firewall protection, whether it be just device management itself. So we are able to remotely manage our devices with device management. All those are going up pretty high. So you're seeing a $35,000 increase there. Before, we didn't have Office 365, right, Steve, on every device. Now we do. So with that allows us, during the age of, everybody remember Zoom, right? Maybe you still use it. We use Office 365, and that is our way of kind of sharing desktops and communicating. That's part of it. So there are some things that we didn't have before that now we have. So that's that $35,000 increase. We have a $71,500 increase in those retirement stipends. So we, in our collective bargaining agreements, teachers and staff have to let us know their intent to retire this current year. And we have a number of those, more than last year. So we have budgeted those in the default. They have until when to rescind? April, Brian? April. And every once in a while, you have somebody will rescind, but we're contractually obligated to set aside those funds for that particular purpose. I mentioned before about special education and out-of-district placements. So that's going up $67,000 and change. That's largely just the increases that are being, really sent to us from the providers themselves. You're seeing some decreases. So with respect, we took a look at charter schools. We do pay for related services for those students who attend public charter schools, and the historicals are showing that whether that be those services that are being rendered or the tuition themselves, historically we're not spending what we were. So I did take reductions there to try to help offset this default budget, which is rather high. With respect to, again, more software, this one here, and this goes back to, I think, what Joe was saying about what was a grant and then now it's not a grant. So we started with Schoology as our learning management platform. For those of you who don't know, what that means is that it's kind of one-stop shopping for students and parents to see the curriculum content is on there. There's the ability for teachers to develop videos for students, vice versa. So that is no longer grant funded, so that's new spending for this in this budget. And you'll see that in the budget.
Hang on one second,
yep.
Scott. Ellen had her hand up. Go ahead, Ellen.
Yeah, the previous slide, district budget highlights.
Yeah.
Reduced from 50,000 and reduced it 63,000.
No, it was higher. It was, I reduced it by 63,000. It was over 100, it was 113 originally, and I reduced it down to 50.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Scott, could you just explain the charter school tuition? Because I understand that your other professional services would be, the sending district is responsible for any services rendered to students at charter schools, so that would be things that are dictated through like IEPs. But charter schools are supposed to be funded with state funds, not any local taxation. So why is there a charter school tuition line just for kids to attend a public charter?
It's my understanding that this would be special education related.
Oh, okay, I thought you said the other professional services was special.
If I can add one thing, though, charter schools get more money in adequacy than traditional public schools do. So I don't know what the new number is, but when we got around $3,700 per pupil, they were getting around $5,700 per pupil. So all public school kids, but charter schools got more money.
Yeah, it relates to special ed.
Okay,
on
so
that
they're
one.
both
Yep.
special, gotcha.
They're both related to that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. Hang on.
Yep.
Melanie?
I believe it's $7,000.
Thank you, Melanie. Anyone else?
It doesn't make me feel better.
Go ahead, Scott.
SAU services are part of the district budget as well. And this one is always tricky for me because the SAU board, I have to do the budget, and I don't know what they're going to approve or not going to approve. So anticipating about a $95,000 increase there. And lastly, data communications. This is our internet service, wireless maintenance, and content filtering. That's going up $10,000. Again, that's new spending. So here's the biggie. So with respect to special ed transportation, I mentioned this earlier, seeing a $333,000 increase, again, attributed to rate increases, and also new students who need that transportation. So that's a big number. The issue, as I'm sure most of you know, is there's a bus driver shortage all across the country. The bus companies are all in competition, scrambling to get drivers. The wages are increasing considerably. So for those of you who have ever thought about driving a bus, this is a perfect time. You can contact either Durham or STA. They would love to have you. But it is creating, pressures there. There are only 2 major providers in the state, 3 big ones. So there's not a ton of competition. Unfortunately for Goffstown, we're too big to use some of the smaller companies that are out there, unless they want to expand, but if you do, please call me. So we're working, that angle as well, and I am talking to transportation providers all the time to see if we can work that out, but it's a very competitive environment right now, and we need transportation vendors to get our kids to school, whether that be here in Goffstown or special education-wise if they're going to another school for services. I mean, it's mission critical. That being said, I did, when I reviewed this and speaking with the superintendent, we took a look at regular education transportation. We have had fewer bus routes and lowered this a little bit to try to offset the increase in special education. Our homeschool student transportation, that's required by federal law, and based upon actuals, we saw an opportunity there as well to slight decrease there. So that is it for the district budget. Are there any questions on the district budget?
Go ahead, Richard.
Scott, so the bus companies are charging X number of dollars. It's all up to bid, right?
In terms of, so we have in the past gone out to bid. The last go-around, we did not go out to bid. The school board authorized me to negotiate with the bus company directly. Now I am negotiating with bus companies. There's only 2 that are more than likely going to be able to work with us. I will share with you the reason why is because my peers in other school districts went out to bid and there was 1 bid, which then they had to take. So it was a better financial strategy to negotiate with 2 or 3 bus companies individually than, kind of go this formal RFP process. And I will share with the budget committee and the public as well is that, yes, our policies do require competitive bidding. And competitive bidding is, generally speaking, when you're looking to buy copy paper, a good route to go, things like that. When you're looking at an ultra competitive environment or one that is not ultra competitive, you have to change up your strategy. So the board has the ability to waive those particular policies given the circumstances. And in the area of transportation, there are not many options. And what you can do sometimes is you can box yourself into a corner and end up paying a whole lot more. So with that, transportation, what I do, and I share this with the board, I'll share it with the community, is I have conversations with my peers in other districts. So I know all of our contracts, by the way, are public information, so I can get all of those to see where we're at on our transportation contracts, and then we share our data in terms of what other districts are currently being charged, so to make sure that you're within the ballpark. Each one of them is unique, right? Because keep in mind that you could have a school district that has less geographical square miles to cover than another one. So believe it or not, like a New Boston has a lot of miles to cover, and they got to send their kids here. So it can be tricky in that respect.
So when you have a shortage of drivers, you don't run certain routes, right?
Correct. So that's what would.
So that is not charged to us, is it?
That's correct. It's not charged, and what we did is those monies in the last couple of years were returned to offset the tax rate the following year. But we're contractually obligated for those routes.
This is one that we'd like to spend a little more.
And, yeah.
So right now, we don't have the ability to have as many drivers on the road as we would like, which means our bus routes are larger, which means that they go on for a longer period of time. And there are a number of programs that we've been significantly impacted that we can't offer transportation, such as all middle school athletics. We have no middle school athletic transportation that we're able to do at this time. So I hope that we will continue to be competitive. I want drivers to be well paid. It's not an easy job to drive a school bus, and it's a lot of responsibility. So my hope is we'll continue to benefit from being able to pick up additional drivers, because we need to put some more buses on the road, and we have the same thing in New Boston. New Boston, we also have a number of buses that are very full, runs that are longer than I want them to be. So I wish we could do better with this.
And it's a state and national issue right now.
So Samantha had her hand up, and then Frank. Go ahead, Samantha.
My question is not related to this topic. Can we turn off the air? It's really cold on this side of the library.
We can, but it involves me leaving and going and finding somebody to do that, so I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
And I think it actually makes it easier to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you.
Samantha. All right, Frank, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is in regard to the number of people served, for example, the regular education transportation, how many students are we talking about versus special education transportation? Do you have any idea?
Well, it's hard to say on the regular education side, but it's eligible to all students, okay? So any kid can get, pretty much get on the bus. On the special education side, it has to be part of their IEP, their plan. And it also depends upon whether or not they're going to an out-of-district school. So one student who goes to, say, the Lakes region or down into Massachusetts, it could be $50,000 a year to transport that student.
And by the way, that could be a student that we didn't even put in that
budget.
school.
Yeah, in that
So
school,
it could
yeah.
be a court placement, it could be a number of other reasons that we have no control over. For special education, as Scott said, the services are all required to be in the student's individual plans.
But you would be, I think where you're going on this is that, you're talking about a very small subset accounts for that overall, but it's something, again, if a student, if their needs require them to be transported, 30 miles south of here, then we're on that.
Right, that's exactly what I was looking at. You've got two sections that are virtually similar, price-wise, and I'm guessing, but I'm a pretty good guesser, that the special education transportation serves a smaller number of kids.
Much smaller.
My question was why, and it sounds like we have contractual obligations and increased costs because of certain factors. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And actually, the cost for a bus on the road, whether it's a regular education transportation, a large, regular-sized
Same,
school bus, or a smaller school bus for special education is about the same. The costs are about the same.
And we do, just for folks' knowledge, we do partner with other surrounding communities. So if there's an opportunity, if a student from here and a student from Bedford all attend a similar school down, say, in Massachusetts, we do sharing of that. So we do get a reduced price, as does Bedford, if we're able to kind of carpool in a way. So you do look for ways to try to, save some funds there. The difference between what Dick mentioned before, in the case of a special education, if we were properly notified, we don't pay for that run if it doesn't go. But that requires the parent to let us know that, hey, either the student is sick, they went on a family vacation or something during the school year. But unlike the other one where we're contractually obligated to pay for for that run.
Thanks, Scott. So Lauren and then Shane. Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Madam Chair. How many buses are you down on the road for your contract right now?
7.
7? Was it 9 last year? Have we made some?
No, we haven't. We have not made progress, and I'm going to tell you why. We have more bus drivers, but not enough that will give us a sustainable, a way to sustainably increase it by 2 or 3 runs, because we talked to the bus company about that, and we have 2 options. Either we, if we decide to go, like, say, 2 more bus routes, we run the risk of, when drivers call out sick, of then having to scramble and then combine, and that's another headache for parents. So we basically said to them, until you know that you can reliably get us, 2 more routes, then just hold tight, for now. So, and that has not happened yet. So again, if anybody wants to be a bus driver, please contact them.
Thanks, Lauren. Go ahead, Shane.
I just wanted to be clear that despite costs, we are legally mandated to provide special education transportation, so we're kind of stuck on that one.
We are.
Thanks, Shane. All right, is there any other questions, comments on the district before we move on? Are you guys all set, Scott?
Yeah. So now it'll be Megan.
So now Megan.
So we'll welcome Megan Bizzaro, our food service director, up to the table. Good evening, Meg.
Good evening, folks. It's nice to see you all, and I should be short.
So I'll just drive. I'll drive. So you just have to say, like, next slide.
Yes,
Right?
there you go. As Scott mentioned earlier, we are actually called an enterprise fund, where we run like any other food service business in the world. We bring in all our own revenues and pay for our people, pay for our equipment, pay for our food, pay for our benefits, you name it. So with that in mind, we'll start off. You can see our fiscal year 24 budget is $1,321,400. Our base budget for 25 is $1,366,980, and we've requested for new spending $51,920, which we will talk about. God bless you. And so that brings our requested budget to $1,418,900, okay? So, and the bottom
I'm sorry.
part does say it is an increase of 97.5. And we'll get into that. We do have, you have a wonderful staff in all 4 of your buildings that I'm responsible for. They're all just really kid-first people. So you should be very proud of them and very grateful to have them, because I've worked in 5 different districts, and this is definitely one of the best teams I've had. There's one of me. There's 4 head cooks, 3 assistant head cooks, and our part-time assistants make up to 14. We have roughly 14 of them, which is 9.7 FTEs. We're pretty lean and mean, but, well, we're not really mean, but I'm sorry about that. But we are, like bus drivers, we are looking for help. You know, we have a couple of, we have 1 head cook position open right now, and we'd love some substitutes as well. So if anyone's out there and enjoys working in a kitchen, fast-paced, having fun, and students, give us a ring or an email, because the email would be better. I'm not in the office often. So that would be great. We'd love to have you come on board. Next slide. That's our fund balance. Unlike the district, we can keep money if we have extra money. I know the district can to a certain level, but we get to keep money. And through COVID, when we had meals for free, we were fortunate enough because the reimbursement from the federal government was quite large. It was over $4 for lunch and over $2 for breakfast. And because it was free, we had great participation. It was wonderful. In the land of lunch lady land, it was nirvana. So as of June 30th in 2022, we had a fund balance of $449,638. And at the end of last year, so that would be June 30th, 2023, we had a fund balance of $356,935. It's a decrease of $92,703. Most of that was used to purchase equipment. We purchased a dishwasher at Maple and had that installed. We had some equipment put in at Mountain View. We've got older equipment, so we took advantage of having money in the bank to replace that. And I can tell you the staff at Maple Ave are thrilled with their new dishwasher, because now they can do 5 sheet pans instead of 1. So we're saving money, saving soap, and being more efficient. So at this time, we don't have a lot of plans for that money at this time, although we do need a new door for our freezer at Mountain View, and we're going to have to go out to bid because of state regulations. Our federal regulations, not states, sorry. And that'll be probably about $7,000 for a freezer door. So we're hoping to keep that money so that it will help to offset any losses that we have, because we are anticipating probably having a loss this year. And I'll talk about part of the reason why in the next slide. Our labor costs, there was a wonderful CBA passed by the community that supported the support staff, of which food service is part of, and that provided some really nice raises for the food service staff. Those are raises that our department has to find a way to fund through sales, meals sales, breakfast sales, a la carte sales, vending machine sales. So that is reflected in this change in terms of our increase here. In fiscal year 23, we had $641,118 budgeted. The actual was $581,877. We had some staff that positions that we did not fill or were not able to fill. In our '24 budget, we're up to $687,000, 435. And again, that had some, we're hoping for full staff for that number. And with fiscal year '25, there's $733,000, $733,015. So you can see we've got some pretty large increases in our labor, and that's also including health insurance in that number. So that's also in that increase. It's not just the payroll part, okay?
If I could just jump in too,
Yep.
like Megan, so everybody knows we compete in terms of the labor market with the Dunkin' Donuts, Whole Foods, fast food, you name it, we're competing in that type of an environment. So, I mentioned before about attracting and retaining people. That's something that's challenging, to say the least. When we talk about not able to fill positions, that also puts a tremendous strain on the staff that you do have, because they have to work that many longer hours or work harder to do it. What it also means is that sometimes it's all hands on deck. It's people, administrators or other people helping out food service because they don't have that. So it has its impact. And we're just like every other food service industry, we're dealing with it.
Food, milk, and commodities cost. You all go to the grocery store. You all know what's happening in the grocery store. That's happening to us as well. Although we are part of a 50 school district food purchasing buying group. And so we are not sheltered per se, but we don't have as many fluctuations as if we were purchasing on our own. We're very fortunate that way. We have a wonderful grocery provider, PFG Food Service, who's been, even through COVID, was phenomenal. Did not, if you will, abuse the situation of COVID, whereas there were other vendors who definitely did and took advantage of that part. So in fiscal year '23 budget, we were at $487,500. Our actual was $439,62. Part of that was our purchasing was really, we did a good job with our purchasing, and we had some decrease in sales as well. In our fiscal year '24, we had $520,900, of which $70,000 is commodities. And in our proposal is $576,330, of which $80,000 is commodities. How we determined that was we looked at what our actual was and used that in terms of the increase. We also have had added on fresh fruit and vegetable, which is at Bartlett, and that's about $10,000 to $12,000. That wasn't in the prior budget because that was something that we found out after budgets were submitted. That's a grant that we received through the federal government. There is also that increase in our commodities as well. And the other bright spot is Mountain View Middle School's breakfast has gone through the roof last year. They were usually around 50 students. They were up to 150, sometimes 200 students coming in for breakfast. So kudos to our staff over there. So when you increase sales, we have an increase in product cost. We do have some noteworthy changes, and one of the things that we didn't put on here that I do want to point out, then I'll start with this, is that last year we did receive additional reimbursement for breakfast and for lunch, basically a higher rate from the federal government. That is no longer there this year. That will translate into about $80,000 of lost revenue in reimbursement. That's a pretty big hit. We kind of start behind. We will do our very best to mitigate that as much as we can. I don't even think it's on the boards at all at the federal government to give school lunch and school breakfast programs extra monies, which is disappointing, but that's where we're at. Salary and benefit increases, Scott, we've got in here that $45,580. Food and milk increases the 55,000. And again, we talked about the commodity increasing and fresh fruit and vegetable. Supply costs, we did put in a modest increase there as well. We do have a reduction in our rentals because we have completed the leases on our vending machines that are here. And we did do a reduction in propane and natural gas based on actuals when we looked at that. So some people always like to ask us, well, how are we doing this year? Well, we've had about 4 weeks of school. But I'm really excited to let you know that the team has been amazing. And overall, breakfast is usually slow because when it's nice out, because breakfast happens before school, students want to be outside. That's okay. Overall, breakfasts were down about 42 compared to last year, 42 students per day. We expect that to rebound as the weather gets colder. We've already seen it start to rebound. Lunch is exciting news. The elementaries, we always start off slow because, I had little kids. Lunch boxes are cool when you're little. I understand that, and that's fine. That's great. But we're seeing meal counts improve every day. The high school and the middle school are up. Now, the middle school, it's about 6, so it's not a lot, but it's a lot because it's only September. And the team that's up there has got lots of great plans for the rest of the year. So I expect that to grow. The high school, which has gone through the most change in the last year and a half roughly, is up 34 students a day for lunch. That's amazing in September. Part of that is we've opened up a new area and we call it the Cave. The staff came in and did some painting, designed it. We have some artists on our food service staff who put out a beautiful sign, write it up every day. And it's wonderful. We used to kind of look like the, gypsies, food service folks with the one lunch, and we would bring a couple of carts down by the theater last year. And this year, with the one lunch, we said we need a permanent place. We need to be someplace. We need to be a destination. And we would serve maybe 12 hot meals, plus a few salads and sandwiches. The other day on Pizza Day, they did 60 slices of pizza, plus salads and sandwiches. They sell out every day. The students are amazing. They stand in line, they're quiet, they're polite, they queue themselves. We don't even have to worry about that. So just wanted to say, I know you're all here, but to the school board, thank you for your support with that and patience while the crew figured it out, because they did. And it's exciting. So, questions?
Yeah, Jared had his hand up. Thanks, Megan.
Going back a couple slides, you talked about your fund balance and how it's been reduced.
Yep.
Kind of a two-part question. Are you looking to keep it at its current level, or do you try to target a range where your fund balance should be based on your actual budget?
We can only maintain 3 months of operating expenses within that, so we want to keep it below that, and we are now below that. At this point I would like to we'd love to keep it, anywhere from 100,000 up, because, for example, a dishwasher's could be $50,000, and all of a sudden you're down. And we can, if we have a loss, it can come out of the fund balance versus having to come to the school board to say, can you help cover this? The team, will come to me and say, you know what, we'd love to buy this. Can we look at this piece of equipment? And we'll look at it and we'll think about it and we'll talk with Scott, especially if it's expensive, and say, okay, what's going to be the return on this? Is it really going to help us do something better for students? And one of the things I don't know who I was talking with, but one of the things, not that there's a lot of good that came out of COVID, but I think COVID in terms of our department, and I've seen this with other schools and programs, is it's kind of forced us faster in terms of, okay, and in the area of innovation and how do we serve students and what do we serve them, we would have gotten places, but we might not have expanded our vending like we did. We might not be doing some of the other some of the online pieces and breakfast pre-ordering and those things like that. So I think COVID has kind of pushed us farther and faster. And some of the things we have to think about is how we serve our students. How can we get them through the line? You hate to say this, but faster, because they need time to eat. There's a trade-off there. So, and we're always trying to figure that out, if you will.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Follow-up question. Knowing that you have about 20 to 25 days of empirical evidence for this year,
Yeah.
are you looking at possible price adjustments in the meals at this point?
I don't think this year. I would rather not this year.
We typically don't make price changes during the year.
Right.
So we'll come to the school board at the end of the year and talk to you about our proposed for next year. But that's one of the reasons why the fund balance is important, because it's a buffer against, food and cost inflation, those types of things, or in this case, decreased federal reimbursement. So you need a kind of a decent sized fund balance to, buffer that, and also deal with equipment that breaks down.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I think there was a question about 10 years ago.
Who did?
Oh, yeah, that was me.
Oh, sorry, Nicole, go ahead. Yes, that's right.
I know that, having kids in the schools, I've seen you press like, hey, if you think you might qualify, fill out the free and reduced lunch form.
Yeah.
It does look like compared to 5 to 10 years ago, we're still much lower, even with kids back in school now. So my question was, is that something that is because of the paperwork alone? Is it changing demographics? Is it a variety of different things? And is there anything we can do to sort of get that where it needs to be if it is underperforming?
I think it's everything that you mentioned, to be honest with you. I don't really remember the demographics 5 and 10 years ago. But I will tell you, in the application itself, over the last 5 years, it used to be like 2 pages that we copied. It's up to 6 pages double-sided. Okay, so when parents get that, you get this big, thick packet, and, who wants, and we can't, and there's a certain order we have to put it in. So the application itself is the last page. So that might be part of it. The form is not as easy as it once was. It's more boxes and more places, and that could be part of it. It could also be that, the economy in Goffstown has changed. People might overall be doing better. But that I really don't have a good answer for, but I think it's probably a bunch of that.
So we should just keep plugging for people to fill out the form.
And I would just share, Megan is wonderful about helping families. So if people need help completing the form, if they're, Megan does all that. So anyone who might benefit from that can reach out to Megan and she will help you with the paperwork.
Yeah. So I see Samantha and Laura. Go ahead, Samantha.
Thank you. I know last year I had a question about, is there a way that we can digitize these forms? Because I know a bunch of the first day of school forms are done digitally.
We do have an online presence, and there is a link to filling it out online.
Okay. Has that caused any improvement in the? Sometimes I feel like forms are shorter when they're online.
Yeah, it is shorter, much shorter when it's online. And I'm not sure if I think it's helped in terms of return of them, because it's immediate. I get an immediate email, and it literally takes me 3 seconds to do an application when it's done online, and then the kid's account is automatically updated. There isn't any kind of lag. So, every year I do see more people using it. So which is good, and it's in everything that we send out. We put out that email.
And I guess a curious question: can you fill it out halfway through the year?
Yeah, any day of the year, on the last day of school, fill it out.
And then my last question is: I know last year we did the increase of wages. Has that helped with filling any positions at all?
Some, yes. Others, I can't figure out why.
Okay.
To be honest with you, I think people are just making life changes. I mean, these are fun jobs, great jobs, but they're physical jobs. You know, you're on your feet, you're moving, you know, we're not slow. We can't be slow. So I think some people just make decisions that say, you know what, I'm happy working at home, sipping my coffee, and that's okay too. So, and I think that's what, part of what is driving us to try and figure out different ways to do things without people. So.
Thank you, Samantha. Go ahead, Laura.
Thanks. The form, is that something that by law, it's a certain way, it comes from the state, or you have control over it?
No control over it. It comes from the feds.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so Lauren and then Melanie. Go ahead, Lauren.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I totally cut you off. Sorry. So my follow-up is to the free and reduced paperwork. So what that enables you to do is you get a higher reimbursement rate from the federal government, not a higher reimbursement rate, but they give you additional funds for the free and reduced lunch program. So it's not money that comes from the state, it's money that comes from the federal government for kiddos that qualify.
We
correct?
actually get a little bit from the state.
Okay.
I think it's 4 cents. But what it does is we have 3 meal categories: full pay, reduced, and free. So if I'm a student and I come through as free and I eat, just because you're signed up doesn't mean we get reimbursement for you. You have to come through and participate, and then we get for something for that child. That's guaranteed money, if you will. And then for our paying students, I think we're at getting 38 cents plus what they pay us, providing that they, you know, parents send in a money for them. And then reduced is right down the middle.
Gotcha. May I follow one
Yeah, go
follow-up?
ahead, Lauren.
Thank you. So you had mentioned that you had worked for 5 other districts. Were any of those from states that have chosen to fund their meals? Because if the states allocate funds to feed children in school, you wouldn't have to do any of this paperwork. You wouldn't have to collect funds. It would be included in our state.
Yes, I used to work in Vermont. I'm a Vermonter, if you will. So, yeah, we're surrounded by states. New Hampshire's the only one.
I'm sorry, we're New Hampshire's the only one?
Maine, Massachusetts, and Vermont are all feeding their students for free.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. Go ahead, Melanie.
Everything that she just asked.
Repeat.
And that's okay, I don't mind. She says it very eloquently. I wanted to give you like a big kudos on the change in the online payment system.
Oh, gosh.
I don't know about how other parents' experience has been with that, but it seems like a much easier system to navigate. You can move funds around between your kids' accounts, but you know, when one eats through half the other one's budget. I think it was really well thought out, really well put together.
Okay.
And yes, you can access that form to see if you qualify for reduced free lunch right on there, and I think that's really valuable to the community.
Great.
Because not everybody's going to look at the papers.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm glad it worked.
Anyone else for Megan? Questions, comments? I see no one. All right. Thank you,
very
Megan.
much.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, Glen Lake.
Mrs. Stoyle. So Kathy Stoyle is the principal of Glen Lake School. She's being joined by Christine Colburn, who is our part-time assistant principal. She's split between Glen Lake and Bartlett. So thank you both for being here.
Thank you, and good to see everyone. I will try to go through this quickly and thoroughly, so. And I have the large print version here for myself, so. All right, so our FY24 budget is $2,679,859. The 25 base is $2,857,100. New FY25 is $17,005, and that brings the requested FY25 amount to
$2,874,105. And the difference is $194,246. So each year, because they're new faces and also for the benefit of the public, I talk a little bit about what makes Glen Lake School unique. We are the preschool and kindergarten building for Goffstown. And students with special needs enter on their third birthday throughout the year. So you will see changes in our numbers more than is typical in other buildings throughout the year as those students turn 3. Then they would, so if a child who ends in, they have a December birthday, they come in December, they're with us from that point on. And then the next year, when they would make that age cutoff for the 3-year-old program, they'll do that 3-year-old year again, but they're getting their services because at age 3, that's when early supports and services, which is the mechanism for children getting services before age 3, that ends as of their 3rd birthday. So based upon current trends, we can anticipate adding more than 15 identified 3-year-olds by June of 2024. Students can also enter at any point after their 3rd birthday through Child Find. We get referrals from parents who have concerns, or through a pediatrician might have said they should look into this, or somebody else has told them. So that happens throughout the year. We also anticipate adding identified 4-year-olds through Child Find throughout the year as well. Last year, just for a reference, our preschool grew by 21 students through the year. So kind of gives you an idea of the growth we have. And just to mention that we don't have any mechanism to forecast the number or the unique needs of the special education students who will age into our program or be identified otherwise. And this preschool program accounts for the high percentage of students with special needs at Glen Lake. And I know there was a number in the district budget line that just talked about the number of special ed students, and ours was in the low 60s. When you think about that, we started around there last year, and we ended around 85 with another handful that were in the process. So bumping us up to like 90 that were either identified or were being considered for identification. So that's that kind of growth, and you will always see on our number on that district slide, it's an October 1st number, so it's always much lower, and you don't see that growth on that slide that we end up being responsible for.
So I just want to also make a statement as well, that a lot of times we get caught up in a number, right? So Kathy just mentioned that here are the number of special ed students, but what sometimes gets lost is that it's the nature of the services that they need. And Kathy, if you could just expand on that a little bit, because the nature and the complexity has changed a lot.
Yep, it has. We've had, over time, we've had a lot more just complex needs that we're seeing in our building. And it used to be, I think that we had a lot more just kids who had speech language impairments and that sort of thing, and we've got a lot more of a more complicated, some medically complicated students, different and different diagnoses, and just the need for more supports has been consistent over the last several years. There's been a growing need. And again, we don't ever know. I think, we'll have students who might come in who need a piece of equipment that we don't have. So whether it's a stander or a hearing device or something. So we're always trying to have a little bit there to be able to meet those needs, but it's always, it's something that it's hard to project for, so.
But that said, we're going to project some class sizes now. So we're looking at this, we're projecting 90 students for preschool, about 130 for kindergarten. And again, kindergarten is another wild card that we've had the last couple years. We've seen a trend where we've had some students that we lose over the summer. Childcare is hard to find, and we've had some childcare centers that have gone to only doing, taking children full day because they can, and they can fill up that way, so that finding that other half day of care is really challenging for parents sometimes, and they sometimes find that even if they have wanted to use the public school program, they can't make it work. So that's been a new phenomenon to see in the kind of numbers we've seen it in the last couple of years. So our total, that brings our total projected to 220. So we, again, that same reminder that we really don't have a real reliable mechanism for predicting those numbers. So our historical enrollment, when you look at the 18-19 school year at 71, we got up to our highest for a while, for the highest to date in 1920, and then we saw a decline. 2021, we didn't take any typically developing peer role model students. That was during COVID, and we were trying to keep as much space as we could between students, especially our real young students who were having a hard time with all of the safety protocols. So we didn't have role models then, and it has been slow growth to get back our full complement of role models. We like to have a 50-50 split in our classrooms. That's what the goal is, for to have a regular education classroom. We're back there with our 4-year-old program this year, I'm happy to say, but we're still slowly growing the 3-year-old program back. With that said, our 24-25 projected, we're at 67 now, knowing that that last year we were at 64 at this time of year, and we grew to 85. So in thinking about what are we really projecting for, we're projecting to meet the needs of those 85, and thinking that we're seeing some growth in that, so about 90 would be our guess. And then kindergarten, as you can see, has been fairly stable. We've had little waves along the way, but we're at about 15 per class this year on average, and I would say 16 is usually a more, we're usually closer to that. So I use that for next year. There are a lot of, again, things to remember about those, and I think I've gone through explaining most of those, but the reminders on that page, or explanations, are there to refer to. So Glen Lake School currently has 185 students in the enrollment. And again, 67 preschool students in 8 sessions, and last year we had 64 at this time, and we grew to 85 in those 8 sessions. Our average September class size of 8 3-year-olds to 10 4-year-olds for preschool, that's where they're running about now, and it'll increase during the year. And we have 118 kindergarten students in 8 sessions, down 4 from last year at this time. And average class size of 15. Our staffing overview, this would be for next year. We would again have 4 kindergarten teachers that each teach 2 sessions, 4 preschool teachers / case managers who teach 2 sessions. They also, they are early childhood special educators, and they do the case management for some of the students in their class. There is a typo on the next line, and I found it late this afternoon, so Scott, I apologize. There's that should say 6.3 FTE at the beginning of that line, special educators and related service providers, and the breakdown of that is 1 occupational therapist, 2 speech language pathologists, 0.8 of a speech language pathology assistant. We share that position with Bartlett. one special educator, and one autism support teacher / special educator, and then a .5 interventionist. That was a position that started last year for us and was continued as a one-year position this year, but it's, we're moving that forward. .2 guidance counselor, we share that position with Bartlett. Also, we have 1 day of guidance. We have 20 paras, several of those are part-time. So we have a smaller number are full day, 5 days a week, but we have several who work 4 days a week, which is the preschool schedule, because they have a day for that case management and evaluation and all of that that goes along with bringing all those 3-year-olds in and through the year. We have a half-day, 2-day equivalent, basically paraprofessional also. We have 1 school nurse. We have 2 full-time secretaries in our building, 1.6 building administrators, so. And we have a custodian, but right now, we have had a half-day custodian as well. And right now, we're in a position where we have we have subs in that position, so because it is unfilled at this time. So, but we are moving forward with that same custodial coverage with the 1 plus the part-time. Noteworthy changes to the budget. Most of our lines have been level funded. We do have an increase of $16,000 for the Wonders Reading Program curriculum, and Scott had mentioned this earlier. This includes electronic access for students and teachers, and this is part of the district-wide curriculum cycle, so it's not something that happens annually. I think it's 6 years, every 6 years.
This is a 3-year.
This one's a 3-year, okay,
It is.
3-year one, okay. And we have a $1,000 increase in water costs due to the modular, $1,495 increase in building maintenance based on actuals, and then another line also with a $4,300 increase for building maintenance based on actuals. We have a $1,500 increase in custodial supplies due to the modular and the demands of that building and keeping it up now that we've had it a couple of years, and increased costs. And $5,000 decrease in electricity based on actuals, and a $2,000 decrease in propane based on actuals.
Thank you, Mrs. Story.
And questions for me?
Yeah, so Joe has a question.
Thank you, Ms. Doyle. Thank you, Madam Chair. So my question is around your positions. So I know typically, like, if we can't fill them, we would have an increase in like the contracted services line to cover the needs of the students. Are all your positions filled, and do you see the contracted services line decreasing because the positions are all filled, or just give me kind of a
so I will
story
tell
around
you
that.
right now, we have we have 1 unfilled paraprofessional position right now. We haven't moved towards contracted service for that at this time. We've been kind of piecemealing together, and I don't know if that will change over time, but everything else aside, we share PT coverage with the district, and that is a contracted service provider, and some of the real specialized, like vision support, that sort of thing, are contracted service providers. But I don't see that increasing. We were really excited this year to be able to find a speech-language pathology assistant. Especially those speech-language positions are so difficult to fill. And so we were really excited to find somebody to fill that position. So those are the ones that I worry the most about. So we're in good shape right now.
Just to follow up, given the need,
Yeah.
do you see a need for that line to stay the same, or is there room
I think
to
we're-
decrease that line?
We're kind of in a holding pattern, I would say,
Okay.
right now, as far as our contracted, what we've been paying is probably not going to change. It's been a smaller number compared to what it could be, I guess, for speech and stuff, but I don't see those other things changing.
Okay.
Thanks, Joe. Go ahead, Frank.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hi, Kathy.
Hi.
Question on projected class size. In this, looking at total number of students for preschool, 90, number of teachers 4, average class size 10 or 12. Does that take into account the paras, or I'm just trying to reconcile class size?
The class sizes, yeah, the class size are the section, so that's per class. So a classroom, a teacher with that number of students. And then there will also be paraprofessionals in that class.
Okay.
We have at least one para in every class because they are little kids who need to use the bathroom and do things, and you need to have somebody to be able to keep teaching while somebody can take care of that other stuff. But we also have the rest of our paras beyond that one person in the classroom are assigned through IEPs.
Okay, thanks. Second part. Noteworthy changes, 5,000 decrease in electricity based on actuals. Did everybody just wear a sweater, or?
I'll explain that one. We're trying to find the sweet spot for electrical usage with, when we added the modules, because those are electricity is what runs everything in the modular. So we budgeted low, so we're trying to find that more or less that equilibrium where it is. We don't have a long history like we do in other buildings, so we're trying to find that spot.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's just based on the guesstimate we had before?
Yeah, that was me. That's more me.
Okay.
That look, in terms of my review of that is it's always a moving target, but
Right.
it looked like the trend was that it could sustain that reduction. So that's what I did.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, Frank. Anyone else? Questions, comments? Go ahead, Brian.
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about full-day kindergarten. So one of the things that we have to continuously talk about is we are one of the only towns in the entire state that does not have full-day kindergarten. Unfortunately, full-day kindergarten continues to be elusive for us. In order to do full-day kindergarten at Glen Lake, Mr. Talbot chaired the facilities committee last year. They took a long, hard look at this. They talked about it. This continues to be something that we have talked about and we have planned. Mr. Gross and I have talked about in future years the possibility of bringing forward a more comprehensive proposal to the board for your consideration. Full-day kindergarten continues to be just outside of our grasp. In order to do it, we're going to need a building. We're going to need more space. We're going to need all kinds of additional resources. The state does not continue to provide any additional resources. It could be the possibility at some point that we talk about a bill for towns that don't have full-day kindergarten yet, and that we target them, particularly towns that have an equalized assessed property evaluation below the state average, which we have. So I just want everyone to know that we care about full-day kindergarten. I wish that we could pull this off, but at this point, it continues to be something that is outside of our grasp.
Thanks, Brian. Anyone else for Glen Lake? All right, seeing none, I guess that's it. Thank you.
Thank
Both
you.
of you for coming. So,
Okay, yeah,
go
so
ahead.
that'll wrap up our budget presentations this evening. We will pick it up right where we stopped with, I think, Maple Ave on Wednesday. So we'll have the additional remaining schools present on Wednesday.
Go ahead, Jared.
Mr. Chair, if you will take a moment, because the Budget Committee is an official meeting, I'd like to
Yes.
make a motion to the Budget Committee.
I'll entertain a motion from the Budget Committee to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, second? Moved by Jared, second by Melanie. All those in favor? Aye. We're unanimous. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Looking forward
all.
to Wednesday.
We'll see you guys Wednesday at 6.
Appreciate everyone being here.
Do you want to take 5 minutes?
Yeah, why don't we take just a quick break? I will say, if anyone is here for public comment, Mrs. Kohler has the sign-up sheet that you would need to sign up, and we'll just take a quick break. So we'll just recess.
So Wednesday, my friend. Yeah, 6 o'clock.
And I know how you function. You can't have them on
No. Well, yeah, we're gonna go through the elementary schools, middle school, and high school. So probably the same.
I do redo my stuff.
flip this way. And now we're back to
We are going to now start our school board meeting, and we have correspondence.
So this evening, we have a couple of different things. The first piece is our online curriculum newsletter that I have shared with the board a couple of different times. This has a number of our curricula assets, how we're integrating them with Schoology, et cetera, and this is great work that's done by Mrs. Lamson. The second piece, and we sent this document to all school board members on August 28th, we had a number of people who presented the board with a petition. That petition was momentarily displaced. It was located. This has been emailed to everybody. You also have a copy of that petition in your individual board packets. And lastly, I wanted to let the board know we have heard back from the New Hampshire School Boards Association, and they have some updates on their policy site.
All right, accommodations, good news. Wendy, do you have anything?
Nothing to share this evening.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, Retta.
Yeah, I attended an international film festival in Keene this past weekend, and I promise this is not about me. But one of the first movies that I saw were shorts, and I had an opportunity to talk with some of the directors afterwards, and one of them, I asked him where he's from, and he said Goffstown. And I said, oh, what's your name? And his name was Griffin Hansen.
Oh, we know Griffin.
And great short. It's on YouTube if you want to see it. It's the 10 Commandments of Banquet Servers. I think something that's a little exciting about it is some of the voiceover characters. It was an animated short. So he had Michael Poliquin, who's also a GHS alumni, Fritz Weatherby, and for those of you who listen to Car Talk, Ray Magliozzi, Click and Clack. So he had people, it was just such a surprise, and it made me think that there's probably a lot of students that graduate, the alumni. I don't know how we keep track of them, but I'm sure a lot of them do interesting stuff. So anyways, small world.
Thank you, Retta. Anyone else? Accommodations, good news? All right, seeing none. We'll move on to public comment. So we have a list of 8 names. So as a lot of you know, once we call your name, you'll come up to the microphone, say your name and address clearly. If you haven't noticed, Mrs. Moran is not here tonight, so she'll be taking minutes from our video, so try to be clear. We are asking you to keep your comment to 3 minutes. At 2 minutes, when you have 1 minute left, Caroline will put up a sign if you could just respectfully finish up your comment. This is not an answer and question dialogue. We ask that there's no clapping, snapping, cheering, booing, anything. Just be quiet and be respectful to everybody that comes up and speaks. All right, so when we call your name, you can come up. Oh, you want to do that first?
Yeah, so I requested the opportunity to address a few things. So this evening, thank you for the opportunity to raise a few outstanding issues this evening. At our last meeting, a number of questions were raised with respect to letters and emails sent to the Goffstown School Board. Specifically, the board discussed that these letters and emails were shared by a board member with their spouse. Following our last meeting on September 11th, I asked a number of questions to our school district's legal counsel. This past week, the board had the opportunity to meet with our attorney to review and discuss the release of letters and emails by a school board member further. Our discussion with our attorney focused on the following information. All letters and emails to a quorum of the board are governmental records or public records. Typically, boards are instructed that any communication to a quorum of the board is considered a public record. That can make it sound like those communications can freely be shared with the public. However, our attorney shared that the fact is that even though a document is a public document or a governmental record, that does not necessarily mean the content of that record may or must be released to the public. The district has policies that state that public records requests, including letters and emails, must be reviewed and processed by the administration under the right to know law, so that information that is not necessarily public information can be identified and protected if necessary before the records are released. That review did not occur in this case, and it should have. So where do we go from here? We will ensure that all board members know that any and all right-to-know requests must be submitted to the superintendent to be processed. We will also review if any changes need to be made to our current policies to ensure proper handling of right-to-know requests by board members. We will also clarify these pieces during our new board member orientation that we currently do when new school board members are elected as part of our onboarding process. Although these documents were not released by the district or by school administration, I would still like to apologize to those impacted by the release of these letters and correspondence. I appreciate people taking the time to share their thoughts with me and with the board, and I feel badly, and it's unfortunate that these documents were improperly shared. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
And if I may, Heather.
Yep, go ahead, Dan.
I am the board member that was referenced in that
and to the board, to those that have been affected by the release of the public record without going through the proper procedure, I apologize. I sincerely apologize, and I can only say it'll never happen again.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it. Okay, so with that, you want to read off your names?
Sarah?
I guess we can hand out at the end, we'll look through it.
At the end?
Yeah. Go ahead. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Sarah Tollefson, 41 North Mass Street. I'm one of the petitioners of the safety device that was mentioned earlier, and I just want to say that I'm delighted that I will have the chance to do, hopefully, a larger presentation than this. This will just be real quick, but I wanted to open up the lines of communication. I know you've all gotten emails from me, and I thought it would be good to put a face to the name, and also for the public. So at the end, I'll give out my phone number, and anyone is welcome to get in touch with me. So this is the night lock device that we're talking about, and it's really simple. This piece of equipment right here goes in this box, and it stays somewhere in a classroom. Sometimes it's like next to the door, and other times it'll be like in the teacher's desk. It has like a sticky 3M thing on the back. And in an emergency, a teacher goes to the box, takes this out, and just slides it in. This bracket, which is on the door, goes into this bracket, which is on the floor. And it's a door barricading device, so it's different than a lock that's on a handle. And it withholds up to 1,800 pounds of force. It's in 4,000 school districts across the country right now. It's in all of the Manchester schools. There's 22 schools, public and private. Dunbarton Elementary installed them. Their PTO actually did the fundraising for it, and the police chief had them installed there. And they're being installed in Pinkerton. As you know, there's going to be a warrant article for the purchase of them. We did also secure a contractor, Jacob's Ladder, who's in Goffstown, who agreed to install them in all the schools for free. So that cost could also be taken care of. In Pinkerton, they were installing 350 of them, which I think is more than we would install here in Goffstown. That was $9,000. That was the quote that was given from the person who's installing them there. So my phone number is, if there's anybody listening at home or the people behind me, my phone number is 603-660-0823, and you can call or text me, and I'm happy to talk with you about this or the group, the petitioners, which is Goffstown Parents in Action. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. All right.
Kurt.
Yep, so he's already there. Hi, Kurt.
Hi. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
I'm Kurt DeVetter, 536 Blackbrook Road, Goffstown. I just thought I'd take less than 3 minutes to come up here and say thank you so much for the work that you're doing. The presentations have been great so far. I won't be able to make Wednesdays, but I've really enjoyed hearing about the great resources that we have in our school district. So, as the father of a 4-year-old daughter, I can't wait to see her shine and grow up in these schools. Really excited for the future of that. And I know that as stewards of our education system, that we are doing that hard work so that our future children can have that chance and opportunity to grow and shine. So that's really all I have to say. Thank you for doing the hard work that you're doing. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Kurt.
Melanie?
Yeah, I think that's Melanie. Yep, there she
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Hi, Melanie, welcome.
Hi. Melanie Renfrew Hebert, 23 College Road. I'm losing my voice a little, please forgive me. I wanted to take a moment to thank the school board for having all of the presentations today. I think that's extremely valuable to me as an individual. And I wanted to thank the school board for the opportunity to speak this evening as the parent of a 6th grader at Mountain View Middle School and a 1st grader at Bartlett. As we reach the 1-month mark for the school year, I'd like to express my thanks to the SAU and to the school board for ensuring that our schools meet students' needs as well as providing the best educators and staff to work with our children. You've managed to continue to offer safe transportation during a very difficult driver shortage, and I wanted to tell all of you that your efforts do not go unnoticed or unappreciated. I know what you do isn't easy, and you often do it under difficult circumstances. I want to offer a sincere thank you to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie.
Gail?
Mary.
Oh, Mary. Mary?
Hi, Mary, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mary Fike Jenkins, 245 Wallace Road. To the school board and the superintendent, this is a tribute to our educators. I want you to hear it on behalf of a community member who couldn't be here and myself, and I'm sure many other people. I want to thank our educators in this district for the countless hours of work outside of your contract in order to be prepared for the following school day. Whether it's correcting essays, making new and engaging lesson plans, or making calls home to connect with parents and guardians. We thank you for sharing your lunchtime with students who feel only comfortable eating and socializing around you, a mentor and protector. We thank you for using your own money to provide snacks for students who are hungry and supplies to students who are without. Thank you for teaching your content, for which you have spent 4 to 7 years preparing, all while being astute monitors who keep close eyes on social situations in the classroom and in the hallways and at lunch. Thank you for being mandatory reporters and the heartbreak that can entail, vigilant caregivers and thoughtful and considerate humans. Thank you for sacrificing your time with family and friends to attend extracurricular activities and advise the groups that provide social and emotional opportunities. There is no other job like yours in the world. You wear numerous hats, you juggle infinite responsibilities, and do it all gracefully every day, despite some degree of lack of respect and compensation. We see you and we thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gail?
Hi, Gail, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Gail Duclos, 270 Chestnut Hill Road, New Boston. We would like the school board to change the policy of allowing young adult books to be available in the library at Mountain View Middle School. According to the permission slip, which is only given to 5th and 6th graders at the middle school, young adult books are written for a high school audience. This permission slip also states the young adult books contain mature themes. There's no indication that the librarian has or is going to read each book labeled in the young adult section, but is relying on professional sources that the content is age appropriate. What professional sources are they using? Are they just using Amazon ratings and reviews? There are no ratings for content in books like there are in movies, television programs, music, and video games. A publishing company can put any label they want on a book and say it is fine for ages 10 and up, even if there are sexually explicit words and graphic pictures in a book. You can read a summary of a book that an author or publicist puts out, but until you actually read a book word by word, you can never truly know what content the book contains. We would also like to know why New Boston parents are not made aware of these books when their child is entering the middle school at 7th grade. New Boston parents need to be made aware that their child has access to young adult books in the middle school library. We are also concerned that students are allowed to access these books during their language arts class time when they are in the library once a week. The young adult books are not in their own section, but are placed on the shelf with all the other books. Yes, they are identified on the spine, but a teacher or librarian cannot see that spine while the child is reading the book in the library. We would suggest that all young adult books be either removed to the high school or be placed in their own section like they are in the public libraries. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail.
Nancy?
Hi, Nancy, welcome.
Hi, Nancy Biederman, 140 Byam Road, New Boston. I'm just going to read at first the Goffstown School District Policy KE, which says that if a member of the public does not want to personally present the complaint, that they have a public complaint to the superintendent, the board member shall ask that the complaint be written and signed. The board member will then refer the complaint to the superintendent for investigation. If the person making a complaint feels that a satisfactory reply has not been received from the superintendent within 15 school days from the time the superintendent receives the complaint, they may request that the complaint be heard by the board. The board will hear and act upon the complaint only by majority vote. If the board does hear and act upon the complaint, all board decisions shall be final. I did submit a public complaint, and I submitted that complaint on August 28th. The first email I received from the superintendent happened 17 school days afterwards on the 21st, and it was just to inform me that they finally found the complaint because it was misplaced. I asked if there was going to be any action on my complaint or any words, and the superintendent said that I did not follow policy, but clearly after you read the other options you have to file a complaint, I don't need to go through the teacher, the principal, the superintendent, or go in that order, the school board. I can go and do another option. So I did follow policy. And I still have not heard any answer for my complaints. And my first complaint was about the bulletin board at Mountain View Middle School. Yes, that material was taken down, but there was another section to my complaint, was about a book, and that it being removed from the required summer reading program, and I still have not heard from that. And I'm disappointed that this board didn't follow policy and did not put it on the agenda for tonight. I'm also disappointed that the bulletin board at the Goffstown Middle School Library has not been looked at and checked, because we have found other material on that board that is not age appropriate. Before I came here tonight, I sent each school board member an article from the New York Post about the Trevor Project and some of the information and concerns. I'm not going to read from this. You can read it. I will tell you, and I did say in the email, that there is information and written in here that is very graphic, and I will not read it out loud. But I'm just warning you right now, it is not. It is definitely adult content, and it is very scary what this mother found. This article mostly focused on the Trevor Project chat rooms. The address for the chat room is listed on the poster, along with other phone numbers and social media links that 10 to 13-year-olds should not have access to,
Nancy, it's
according
been
to
3
the
minutes.
article.
It's been 3 minutes.
Okay. So got another public complaint, so I'd like that poster to be removed.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you. I'll leave it right here,
Jennifer?
so it can't get lost.
Good
Hi,
evening.
Jennifer,
Hi.
welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Jennifer Lever, Catherine Street, Goffstown. And I have the wonderful opportunity to share a complaint. First of all, I just want to say thank you for all that you do. And I think that I've worked with kids for many years, and I have a love for them and want to protect them. So we are writing to file a formal complaint against a newly elected member of the Goffstown School Board. On September 8th, immediately following the superintendent's decision to have sexual identity and gender pronoun material removed from the library whiteboard, many parents became aware that this school board member sent a bag full of "What are your pronouns?" #ally sexual identity bracelets to school and had them handed out to other students. Some students said that they felt uncomfortable and were fearful that they would be discriminated against, bullied, or teased if they did not accept a bracelet. The nature of this action and using a child in this manner is wholly unacceptable within an educational environment and has raised further trust concerns among parents and the broader school community. The main purpose of school is for education, and these bracelets draw attention onto political and sexual controversial issues that take their minds off their schoolwork. This is frustrating to teachers and staff as well. We believe that it is of utmost importance to maintain a safe and respectful environment within our school, and it is concerning to me to see a member and others to see a member of the school board acting in a manner that breaks the dress code and contradicts these principles. This incident reflects poorly on the school board as a whole and raises questions about the judgment and behavior of its members. We kindly request that the school board initiates an investigation into this matter and takes appropriate action in response to the conduct of the school board member. It is our hope that such actions will prevent similar incidences from occurring in the future and help to restore trust within our school community. We are choosing to read this complaint publicly so that other parents are made aware of and have full transparency into the school board members' behavior. Thank you for your attention to this issue. We trust that the Goffstown School Board will take the necessary actions to ensure the well-being and reputation of our middle school, that the reputation of our middle school are upheld. Sincerely concerned parents, grandparents, and residents of Goffstown. And we'll be emailing this along with the signatures to the superintendent and principal as well.
So I need you to file that complaint with the superintendent, please.
Okay.
Okay, because the board doesn't want, in our policy, we don't hear complaints about school board members unless you go through the superintendent first.
Okay, thank
So if
you for your
could hand that
clarification.
to him, that would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you very
Jennifer,
much.
if you want to leave that paper on the table, I'll come get it
Sure
after.
can.
Thank you.
All right, so the last person.
Do you want the signatures too?
Yes, please.
Yeah, just leave that there, we'll grab it.
Pam.
Where is she? There she is. Hi, Pam, thank you.
Hi, no problem. Thanks for having me. Pam Boyer, 22 Gorham Pond Road, Goffstown, obviously. I just want to say real quick, I wish Jenny McKinnon was here because she said she wanted more public comment last time, and there was some really good public comment to start off, so sorry she missed it. I also just wanted to reiterate, you have the policy IJLR for your library material and whatnot. I do want to reiterate that maybe we could do something to kind of educate the public a little bit more about that, and make sure that you guys are aware that I might be here speaking as one person, but there are a lot more people like me that are not going to let the LGBTQ community, whether it be the youth or the adults in the community, kind of be run over by certain circumstances or a smaller amount of population right now. So I'm not really good at public speaking, but that's what I'm here to say. I'm just letting you know that I appreciate everything you guys have done, the investigations that you have done into some of this stuff, and I hope that in the future you just make sure that you're following the proper procedures, the proper guidelines, and making sure we're doing what's best for all.
Thank you, Pam. All right, so that concludes our list of public comment. So I'm going to close public comment tonight. We're going to finish up with our board meeting. You are all welcome to stay. If you do choose to leave, I ask you to do so quickly and quietly. All the microphones pick up all the noise for people at home watching. But thank you all for coming tonight. We appreciate it. All right. All right, so we're gonna move on to the approval of the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Thank you, Jared. Second it by Shane. Did anybody see anything? Everything's good? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained? We're unanimous. All right, oh,
Before we go to the rest of the agenda, we have some items in our packet that I don't necessarily see on the agenda. Is it just additional information? The C&E, abridged notes, power
yeah, the
loss?
C&E, Ginny unfortunately had a family emergency, could not come, but C&E I think is going to be discussed Wednesday with questions, but she's not going to be here Wednesday either, so I'm not sure. This was stuff that was given to us. Is somebody?
We could have Mrs. Kohler do the report out on
Okay,
C&E
so we
in
get to
Mrs.
C&E.
McKinnon's absence.
Yep. Absolutely.
And the other document, Mr. Cloutier, there are a couple things that I'm going to update during my superintendent's report
Okay.
that had to do with the power outage at the
Perfect.
middle school, et
Oh,
cetera.
that's
So
great.
I'm going to speak to those pieces.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. All right, so A and F. Scott?
Sure.
If, before Scott starts, because
Yeah.
the first thing we do is the manifest, I'd like to make the motion that we
Yeah.
approve the current manifest from September 11 to October 2 in a total amount of $2,976,514.27.
Did you second, Ellen? All right, second by Ellen. Go ahead, Scott.
All right. So, as you can see, the vast majority of our manifest is payroll, taxes, and benefits, nearly $1.9 million of those. Special ed activity is a little over $326,000, of which Durham School Services, which is special ed transportation for the summer, $110,695. And then there is just a list of either out-of-district tuitions and speech or special ed contracted services that represent that total. They range from services for behavioral to speech, et cetera. So it's typical of what you see. With respect to your general expenses, I'm going to go through some of these only because they're ones that we don't often see. Cengage Learning, $201,523. That's the math curriculum. That is grant funded. John Neville Excavating, that was the turf project as well as brush removal at Mountain View Middle School and Goffstown High School. Houghton Mifflin is your student testing. That's the NWEA, and I believe that is like more or less baseline testing, right?
Yes.
To determine growth throughout the year. Let's see, Connection Financial, those are laptop leases. Marvell Glass, as you recall, we did the project for, I mentioned it earlier, at Mount Maple Avenue at Bartlett, the Windows project. Well, this was the security film that goes on those windows. SGS Turf Care, even though we have a turf field, we have a lot of non-turf fields. So that is Mountain View and Goffstown High School grass field care. And if those of you have not been to Mountain View, the lower fields, take a look at those. Just between the irrigation system and just all the work that was done down there. I don't think they've ever looked better. They look awesome. A new one that you're seeing here is Avantis Education. VR stands for virtual reality headsets and equipment. This is now required under the state curriculum standards. Green Electric. This one, the expense is $10,061. This was for, there was new 220 lines that were needed for copiers. Interestingly, on this one, half of the cost of that is being paid for by the copier company. We had asked a question as to whether or not these new production quality machines would need new electrical outlets. They said no. They turned out that they did. And I guess Steve was the nice person. I don't think I was so nice talking. And they did, I asked them to pay for half of them, so they did. Power School, that's GHS information access fees. Let's see, Northeast Flooring, Mountain View Middle School flooring replacement cycle. So we are doing a couple of classrooms at Mountain View in terms of the VCT, the vinyl composition flooring, the tiles. Turnitin LLC, that is the IT software that we use for plagiarism detection. Going back, I'm sorry, BMO Harris Commercial Bank, that is the district credit card. So in this particular case, there was a lot of facilities purchases, so we purchase our filters using the credit card. Steve does a lot of IT purchases also. A lot of our like monthly renewals are out of that. And then we did have a new teacher orientation. That was, I think, 4 days long. We did provide refreshments during that, so that was used for that. Hussey Seating, that is bleacher and winch inspections. Blue Ribbon Property, we installed fencing alongside the playground there, and that was the cost of that. Staples was for school supplies and equipment. New England Sports is gym floor refinishing here at Goffstown High School. And last but not least, Gov Connection is another highlighted one, IT licenses. So with respect to food service, the one that you typically see is Performance Food Service, and that was food and commodities, but the new one is FoodWorks Technologies, and I believe this is what Melanie Renfro-Heber was talking about. This is the menu logic software, the implementation for the new software that we're using. So we have Titan, that we also have something that deals with our menus, that gives caloric content, kids who might have special dietary needs, it helps them with that. So I don't know if there's any questions on the manifest.
Go ahead, Jared.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for the general expenses, these were all out of Fund 10, nothing came from grants?
Some did. So I will tell you.
Cengage did.
Cengage was definitely grant funded. Hold on, there was.
The VR headsets were as well, Scott.
Yeah,
Those were
yeah.
through Title I.
Yep. And I just don't have a ton of, sometimes, space to
I
put that in.
gotcha. It'd just be great to see it if you could.
And if I may, Jared, when you look at the big manifest that we signed,
Yeah, you'll see
there are
that.
different columns
Yeah.
for the general pieces.
We always get that afterwards though, Dan,
Yeah,
so.
it's after.
Anyone else? Was that the only two that you know of that were grants, Scott?
I'd have to
Go through.
go through it. It just doesn't, I know that the security film was Fund 11, which was an encumbrance from last year.
No,
I remember
the
that.
important thing is, I think that you've done that in the past, say what fund
Yeah.
of money it comes out of, and it just,
Yeah.
I didn't see it here, so that's why I wanted to ask a
Yeah,
question.
no, thank you, Jared.
Yeah, if I may,
Yeah,
there was
go ahead, Dan.
$275,607 on this manifest that came out of the special revenue fund.
Okay.
Not necessarily the 5,000 and over. And capital projects was $11,332.
All right, is there any other questions for Scott? We have a motion, we have a second. All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous.
All right, so you have two donations this evening. You'll recall that the state law changed. Anything now over $20,000 donation requires a public hearing. So you have two. One of them is that there was a donation of $5,990.40 of Stop the Bleed kits that were donated to the Goffstown School District by an individual. And then the other was a check donation of $2,260.66 from a entity in the community entity that donated money. So they did not ask to be named.
Okay.
And that is going towards the Goffstown High School turf field project. So both of those donations, they can all be one motion to accept the Stop the Bleed kit and the donation towards the GHS turf field. Those can be made as one.
Okay.
If you so inclined.
All right, so Ellen made that motion. Do I have a second?
A second.
Caroline?
Quick comment.
Yep.
The Stop the Bleed kits are officially from the Elliott Hospital, so.
I was going to speak to that during my report to clarify. Thank you, though.
Thank you, Nicole. Dan, did you have something?
The question related to, they were the actual bleed kit, not the cash to buy them.
Correct, the actual kits. And the kits are valued at approximately $60 each.
Yes.
And we got 100 in this last round.
Thanks. Go ahead, Jared.
I'd just like to add that if we could send a message on behalf of the board, I think we should also take a vote on that as a friendly amendment to say, on behalf of the board, thank you for this to these individuals that are providing us commodities and
Right.
money, if you
Yeah,
will.
I think it's a good idea.
Can we
Ellen?
add that to the motion?
Ellen, do you,
Friendly amendment to add to the motion.
you're good with that? And then Caroline, you second? You're good with that? Okay. So any other comments or questions? We have a motion, we have a second. All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous. All right, thank you, Scott.
And the next one is just to more or less, I gave a handout with regard to the ESSER grants. And in speaking with Steve Bourget and looking at our budget for next year, there's an opportunity, I think, to buy, we were going to be buying the laptops and carts. There's going to be 2 of them for the media center here. So if you recall, there were those tables were over there, and there were Apple, desktop computers. And now the plan was, which was in our budget for this year, was to replace those with 2 laptop carts containing 50 laptops. This is something that would easily be approved under ESSER 3, and it will allow greater flexibility for IT needs that are not in next year's budget that were removed, and I can go over that, with you. But we're trying to take things out of the budget because we had to cut the budget, and being flexible, trying to understanding that ESSER 3, this is an approvable expense. So just trying to be, I guess, more or less nimble and trying to reduce next year's budget and trying to make some accommodations in that respect.
Go ahead, Jared.
With ESSER 3 and all the money remaining of ESSER 2, though very little, we've talked about during our budget presentations the need for air handlers, HVAC work, boilers. Is that something that we should be focusing on with these ESSER funds over laptops? And can we use that money for those items?
You could use them for either, but what I'm saying is right now, I'm tasked with trying to get our budget next year down. This was something that I saw, I was like, wow, Steve gave me the bids. I'm like, okay, we can either pay it right now, do the PO and put it in our budget, use our budget function this year, or kind of flex and say, okay, let's use ESSER grants because we know that we have other IT needs that we're trying to peel off from next year's budget, and potentially pay for that. But I'm giving you the advice as your BA that this is I'm trying to help offset these budget increases. This is what I'm recommending. If the board chooses not to, we'll spend it out of this year's budget and we'll go Plan B, but that's.
No, Scott,
yeah.
I think you're bringing us options,
Yeah.
and that's the important part with
Yeah.
your recommendation. You say that, it'd be lowering the budget, but yet we're talking about having a bond to pay for some of these items where we could use ESSER funds as well. So it's money that is needed, and I think what you're providing us is you believe that we should spend ESSER funds on this and roll in our infrastructure costs into a bond that would then be approved.
More or less. I think that you can create a municipal lease for both IT. It's a shorter duration. It really doesn't go more than 5 years. The HVAC purchases usually go 15 years in terms of a municipal lease. But this is just simply because Steve was looking to purchase these laptops and carts like now, I did not want to just unilaterally say, fine, I'll write the grant, we'll use ESSER funds. Obviously, I want to get your authority to do that. And, my thought process is that I would write the grant activity tomorrow. If you approved it, it'll probably get approved within a few days, and Steve would have his order, and hopefully we'd have these laptop carts laptops within a month. So that was the thought process of trying to be flexible with how we spend money.
Are you set? Okay, Dan, go ahead.
So we got two little things to think about. There's the money part about. I'm going to ask administration, there's no Apple computers on those tables anymore. How much do we need to have laptops for the students for what they need to do versus potentially some maintenance devices that may malfunction or need to be replaced? Where does administration sit on the need for the equipment if we only had $45,000?
So I can answer this one, I think, somewhat easily. We have laptop carts that are here. They are signed out routinely, and there's usually a shortage of them. And the superintendent talked about one-to-one. You've been here talking about one-to-one. The notion of in a piece of equipment that breaks down, the CRF, which we have about, that 250,000, we could use CRF funds if an air handler goes and it's a $45,000 air handler or something. I can't use the CRF to replace laptops. Doesn't qualify. So that's the reason.
Go ahead, Rena.
I guess I'm a little curious because we're going to hear about the one-to-one model. I mean, do the students need laptops? I mean, what are they using right now? And will they be are we looking at a different way to make sure everybody has?
All right, I think I have created a bit of confusion, so for that I apologize.
Yeah.
If I never came to you, there would be laptops and carts in here in like 3 weeks.
Okay.
But I put a pause on it because I didn't want to spend FY24 budget dollars on these laptops, because I saw an opportunity to have them grant funded to free up our budget funds and do a budget transfer to do something else, given the fact that we have a very tight budget. So what I would have put in the budget for FY24, given I don't want to, or we don't want to because of the situation that we find ourselves in. So we're trying to be fiscally prudent by being flexible. But had I done nothing, and they would have been here, because it was part of your budget process last year that we were replacing those computers. I'm just trying to use a different funding source, that's all.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dan.
And technically, because they're budgeted funds in FY24, and you're looking to reduce FY25, that decision could be made in 4 or 5 weeks or within the month that we need to do, but that money could be used for anything because we have the capability of transferring.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's really what I was trying to accomplish was, I know I'm going to get grant approval to do this because we have in the past, and it's clear cut. Whether or not I could get grant approval on other things is, it's always a crapshoot. So it was just gave us that flexibility to do a budget transfer down the road.
Go ahead, Brian.
Scott, I would just add that through the budget process, we cut a lot of things.
A lot.
So there are a number of things that we will try to prioritize purchasing this year. Scott and I have talked about freezing budget lines. That's not a conversation that we've had historically in this SAU in a really long time. But we recognize when we looked at the increase of almost, what was it, 2.7 million increase to get to default, that influenced how we went through the budget process. So for example, Mrs. Kohler had a number of important curriculum-related things, and when we cut things, what I had said to Wendy was, we're going to try to do things this year, we're going to try to prioritize, we're going to try to make some hard decisions, because we wanted to bring the budget that we were presenting to you this evening as low as we could get it. So unfortunately, and we can talk about all the things that we cut out of the budget. There were a fair number of positions that were asked for, that we cut every single one of them. We wanted to remain staffing neutral. So when we go through the budget process more, you'll hear more about that. But we made hard decisions, as we always do during the budget process.
Alan, go ahead.
Just quickly ask Ginny's question. When we go through the budget,
Yep.
because that's what we're talking about, what was cut, I'd like to know specifically what those items are.
Yeah, we can share the list with you.
It
It was all new positions that were asked for were cut.
So maybe we can get a list when we start going
You
through
know, and
our-
what school, I mean, what
our
were the
stuff.
needs? I mean, I understand everybody's concerned with the quality and the services we provide, but that's a lot. It's staffing, special ed, services for reading and math, I don't know what they could be.
Right.
Behavior people, that kind of thing.
Again, I think in the context of that health insurance increase, I'm not so sure we would have gone down this path, but when
Agreed.
it went from
Agreed.
8 to 14%.
I would
how
agree.
did we couldn't look ourselves in the mirror and think that that was something that the community we thought would accept. So then our thought process just quickly pivoted to, we have to be status quo on staffing, try to be as status quo on everything else as possible, shift things around. Maybe we don't do what we were going to do on one thing, but
Or
then
slow down an
there.
initiative so that we can fund it over
We've got
multiple
curriculum
fiscal
needs,
years.
There's a lot of other things that we got, so we have to be now creative. So this health insurance thing, it did not just impact next year's budget. It's impacting how we spend this year's budget, because things that are mission critical for next year, we probably have to do this year, which means the things that we wanted to do this year maybe can't happen.
Okay, I don't
So,
disagree with
yeah.
what you've done, but I'm
Yeah.
thinking it might be very important, not just for us, but for the public to hear some of the key issues that we're not able to do because of fiscal restraints, for one reason or another. Insurance is one of them. That happens not infrequently. But I think it's important for the public and voters to know the kinds of things that we want to do for our children and provide to our students to help them advance their learning that we're not able to do. And I think they need to, maybe I'm alone with this, but I think the public needs to understand that just because a budget passes doesn't mean we're able to do those things, because other issues come up that we're required by law to do. And I'm wondering if there's a way by which we can get at least a summary stated in public and for our record as to what kinds of things, any initiatives, any materials, whatever, at any grade level, that we're now not able to do. I just think it might be valuable for
Yeah.
people to know.
We usually get a list, right, when we start working, so if we could get one for each school when we start going through, that'd be
Thank you.
great. Thanks, Ellen. Go ahead, Dan.
I'm going to circle back to the
Yep, to
computer
the ESSER
purchases.
funds, yes,
So
thank you.
logically, in my brain, what I'm thinking is, we've got $45,000 of ESSER funds that have not been indicated that we have something that we can use to fund it with. We have a project that we can fund it with, which would then release the current fiscal year '24 $45,000 to be used for something else. And if we don't do that, then that 45,000 just sits there waiting for something for it to fund.
Or return to the public.
Or, no, it's returned to the government.
Okay.
So if we use this for the laptops, then the 45,000 is available to use for something else or return for taxes if we wanted to.
And
It
I
could go
would
both
share,
ways.
in addition to staffing cuts, we made technology cuts. So there are other things that were asked for that we could potentially repurpose this money. And this is very reflective of what we do. So we run a very fiscally conservative school district. That's why our per pupil cost is what it is.
And then if I could just add one thing, I'm sorry, but.
Yeah, and Retta had her hand up, too.
Yeah, just recognize that as we talked about math curriculum, your wonders reading is in this budget, but we've got a science curriculum that we have to electronic curriculum to deal with, social studies, so like, these things are dollars, so we're trying to be mindful of like, trying to free up potentially for a budget transfer, 6 months from now to pay for this stuff, because I can't do it next year, and then we can't go $500,000-600,000 above the default when the default itself is, $2.9 million. So that's what we're trying to do.
Go ahead, Rhoda.
I just want to say, the only concern I have is that it doesn't sound like a lot of money, but there may be another program or another purchase that would be more valuable that we absolutely need. And it's, I understand it's kind of a crapshoot. However, I do understand that this has to be spent down by September 30th of next year.
Yeah.
So what kind of motion is needed?
Well, it
Just to
depends
authorize
on-
me
Yeah, if you guys are ready to
proceed
make
with
a
the grant
motion.
activity, because it's not my place to, I've gone before you on this.
I'll move to authorize the business administrator to move forward with the grant opportunities. Is that the right word?
For the-
ESSER 3 grant in the amount not to exceed, Scott?
I would just say grant activity for the GHS media laptops and carts.
Using available funds.
Yeah, not to exceed 50. Yeah.
That's fine.
All
Thank you.
right, so Ellen has a motion, Nicole a second. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Did you say yes?
I voted.
Oh, you did, I didn't see your hand. Okay, so we're unanimous. All right, thank you, Scott.
Thanks.
All right, so Jared, Budget Committee.
Budget Committee, so I will first start with, we toured all the schools, and to Ellen, to answer your question of what was cut out, the Budget Committee asked each principal what they wanted. And I heard from all the elementary schools, and I'm not sure about the middle school, they all wanted an additional interventionalist. So that's at least one of the items that each principal told the Budget Committee they were looking for. Also want to thank our guests that attended some of our schools. Mr. Racine had joined us at Maple, and of course, Nicole joined me at the middle school as we did the tours. So thank you to those members of the public that came through those tours with us. Great times were had. There was one question, and I think I'm the one that opened up that can of worms, so I do apologize. There was a question at the middle school to say, why is a flag still up without a spotlight after sunset? And I actually looked at the flag code policy after I talked with Jess to say, okay, our flag code, our flag policy doesn't actually say, even though it says be respectful, it doesn't say that we follow the US flag code. So we had conversations about that of either A, installing a spotlight there, which the Budget Committee seemed to be okay with, or B, take down our flags at dusk, according to the flag code.
With all due respect, the Budget Committee, I think that they're going above and beyond their purview in terms of dictating operational policy for the school.
Well, they are saying that they would fund it from a budget perspective, but I'm bringing it back to this body as a potential policy change.
Yeah.
So that would be one of those things where it does say to handle the flag respectfully, and according to our US flag codes, respectful means up during sunshine or with a spotlight on it at night.
Right.
That's my opinion.
Typically, our flags are taken down every afternoon. Mrs. Kohler, would that be your recollection from Mountain View?
Yes, so we were able to work with some of our Boy Scouts that were a part of that process at Mountain View when I was there. So I'm assuming that we could talk to Miss Milligan about setting something up for students who know how to properly take care of a flag. And most of our Boy Scouts have been trained to do that, which is why we use that, students who were involved in that organization in the past.
And Jess did say something along those
Yep.
lines.
The
of
other,
trying to implement
very
that.
inexpensive-
But I would ask that, this isn't just at the middle school, what are our other schools doing as well? So again, I'm asking for a potential policy update, Ms. Chair, on those, if it's something that we should be considering.
Okay.
Solar is another option. We put a solar light on top of the flagpole.
Yep.
It illuminates it, so.
Do you have any more?
Other than that, we're all here today, so we look forward to Wednesday as well.
All right, thank you, Jared. Ellen, do you have any updates for CIP?
Nope.
All right, perfect. Jared, Goffstown Planning Board meeting update?
Yeah, that was fun. It wasn't in the correspondence folder. I did send the
Oh, that's
superintendent.
right, you did send that.
Okay,
I'm
it's
sorry.
okay.
We'll make
I'll
sure
give,
we get that.
I'm going to go off the cuff here and try to give my feedback. So I presented a memo that I read out to the planning board. I was actually able to present again. Yay, us. You know, I talked about the plans that they have of, they have a 10% grade that's coming down into Mass Road. The egress, which is basically coming out onto the Mass Road, if you look to the right, they're at the state minimum of 400 feet. I started quoting statistics from municipalities to say, hey, if you're doing 40 miles an hour, which is the speed limit, you know, it takes you this long to brake. If you're speeding and doing 50, it takes you this long to brake. We presented, or stop, I should say, we presented that information to the planning board. They said, thank you very much. And then they said, certain members of the planning board said they had talked to the bus company on what they would prefer what would the buses prefer to do to stop. According to the planning board member, they said that the bus company, again, hearsay, but it's part of the meeting minutes there, that the bus company would rather stop in Mass Road to let students on and off the bus versus pulling aside into a culvert or something along those lines. They thought that that was a safer option than, you know, stopping in the middle of Mass Road with all those cars backed up, people honking their horns saying, what the hell, I gotta get to work. They'd rather stay in the road than go to a culvert. The other piece is about school-age children. I presented our findings from our demographic study to say that we would be between 0.44 and 1.64 school-age children per residence that's there, because it is a 3-bedroom townhouse. And we only did 2-bedroom townhouses, I believe, as part of our study. They came back and their developer did a study and said that their school-age children estimates was 0.393, a little bit under what we had as our minimum. So even though that we said that the lowest number of students would be 14 that would come from that development, the developer says it would be 12 students. So again, lower than us, and they did cite their review. I did forward that on. Hopefully we can get that out, Brian, to the rest of the group. There's some, I'm long-winded here. The important thing I'm trying to get is, you know, there's some key takeaways here. The planning board listened to us as part of our conversation, but they just said thank you and moved on and listened to the developer. And I understand why they did that. If we wanted to kind of continue this rigor going forward with new developments, I would recommend that we try to get in sooner to state out what our concerns are against our assessment of our town that was done by individuals, not an assessor that's from a different organization. So that would be my kind of lessons learned from this experience here. I'm open to any questions that people might have.
Go ahead, Shane.
I actually don't have a question, but I just want to thank Jared for all the work
Yeah.
that he's done with the planning board on this.
It's a lot of meetings, he's put together some great memos,
Yeah.
he's been very vigilant on
And
this.
he's kept us informed on this, so
Yeah.
thank you, Jared.
Much appreciated.
Definitely.
Yeah,
go ahead,
Is that just kind
Nicole.
of the end of the story, that they're gonna just do what they want?
Yeah, they accepted the plan, they accepted the completed draft with conditions. Those conditions are, hey, your neighbors are okay with some of these things. Hey, there's a vernal pool that's going to be in a certain area. I expect no additional actions for us on this development at this time.
Thanks, Jared. Anyone else for Jared? All right, thank you so much, Jared. All right, PNC, Retta.
Yep, our next meeting is on November 6th.
Yep, 6
You know what?
o'clock here.
Yes.
Policy review, we are not meeting this month, so our next meeting is November 13th at 5:30 at the SAU. C&E, Wendy? Sure.
At our September 18th meeting, the Goffstown High School administrative team came to bring several course proposals for next school year. Those courses were sent to all of the board members electronically for you to be able to review. Just for the public to know, those courses included Running Start Introduction to Programming with Python, Running Start Intro to Network Technologies, Running Start Intro to Information Technology, It's important to note that this is an existing course, but there was budget because of new software that was needed, which is why we included that with the course proposals. Honors band, chorus, orchestra, and music theory. An integrated science, technology, engineering, and math concepts course. A Running Start Essentials of Exercise Science. Running Start Nutrition for Health and Fitness, and AP Art and Design.
Mrs. Kohler, before you go much further, you said Running Start a number of times there. Can you please explain what that is?
Yes, so students have the opportunity to earn college credit for those classes. If you noticed in your electronic copies that were sent to you, through the Manchester Community College system, the syllabus was also placed with those materials so that you could see the content that was being taught as well.
So students are able to get dual enrollment while
yep.
they're in high school, they're earning college credit for all of those Running Start classes. So anything that allows kids to earn credit before they graduate from high school is a wonderful thing and potentially saves them a lot of money when they go to college.
Absolutely. So C&E did approve all of those courses on the 18th, and we're bringing all of those courses through this evening, looking for board approval. I will mention that the high school administrative team will be here on Wednesday evening, so if there are any specific questions about courses, they will be here on Wednesday night if you feel like you don't have information enough to be able to approve those this evening. Also, at our meeting, we went over our district goals. This year.
Hang
Sure.
on one
Oh, I
second,
apologize.
sorry to
That
interrupt you.
can-
Dan, go ahead.
The question is, are there instructors, teachers available now
Yes.
to make this happen?
Absolutely. So that was a question that we spoke about at C&E. So we do have qualified teachers to be able to teach these courses.
So there would not be any increases of additional teachers are needed. We're adding new courses. Now we have additional bodies that we're adding. So these would be, some of them elective credits.
Yes.
That we would build into teachers' schedules. So there would not be any increase in staffing associated with these.
Yeah. If a follow-up, would
Yeah.
it be an additional assignment for them for additional stipend money? Because I think it's so many courses per period, day, whatever that stuff is.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So would we have to pay teachers for additional sections? At this point, we would
No.
not anticipate that.
Okay.
Yep.
Ellen, you had your hand up. Oh, sorry.
Almost answered
Your
everything,
hand-
because
your-
the cost is the
Okay.
staffing. And I imagine if there is any cost for materials and books or anything, it wouldn't be terribly high or?
So one of the things that the high school did is they anticipated, hoping that these courses would be approved, and they built that into the budget process with Scott. So all of those costs you will see as part of their budget presentation on Wednesday evening.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Rheta.
And correct me if I'm wrong, my recollection is some of these were replacing outdated courses, and it was the technology is more standard, so it's a benefit to the students to be able to do this, and also reworking some of the existing courses and combining them into honors. So it's, many of them were similar courses, but they had been updated for the 21st century.
So an example of that, Rheta, if I might, is the AP Art and Design course that will replace the honors course. So instead at the AP level, we had teachers who were kind of doing independent studies with students, and were doing like a lot of extra work on the side and not getting paid for that to be able to work with some students for those AP classes, and this will take the place of that. So it will actually be a class that students will be enrolled in.
AP would be, if I may,
Yeah.
another example. If students achieve a certain grade on the AP test, they're able to get college credit for those classes. So again, these would be good examples of things that are important to our kids and our families.
Go ahead, Shane.
Oh, I just wanted to say that I think with the Running Start, in my experience working with teachers who've taught these classes, I think the big thing is that you have to have the master's degree.
You do.
And then you go through the college. And personal experience, I took a bunch of Running Start classes when I was in high school, and I was able to graduate from college a semester early and saved, $20,000. So it's a great opportunity for our kids. And I think we probably have staff that can already slide right in there and do it. So
We do.
it's great.
So
All right.
inquiry is, you're looking for a decision tonight?
On the courses?
We are.
Yes.
Would one of the C&E members want to make that motion? And
What's under new business is number 7.
Yeah.
It's under new business.
It's under
Oh, it
new
is? Okay.
business, yep.
Course approved.
This is just
I
an
missed it, I'm
update.
sorry.
That's all right.
Oh, there it is.
Go ahead, Wendy.
Well, I was holding my
Never mind.
questions till then.
Never mind.
Go ahead, Wendy.
We also went over our district goals. So for this school year, rather than having each individual school have their own goals, we moved to having overall district goals that we're using here in Goffstown and in New Boston. Those goals have been put on our website. We also sent them to you electronically. Our first goal is looking at student achievement. Our second goal speaks to safety, and our third goal looks at digital citizenship, which is really aligned to using our Schoology platform. So that was just for board notification. We actually don't need an approval. Back in the Cinny-Dinny days, when you had to have specific school plans, we're now moving away from that and going to district goals instead. The last thing I wanted to mention is every year, we get randomly selected to participate in MAPE testing, and we were chosen again. So Maple Ave
Every
fourth
single
graders-
year.
We need to buy a ticket.
Yeah, right. So Maple Avenue fourth graders, and then eighth graders at Mountain View, and that will happen at the end of February. I believe they're on the 20th and 21st of February.
And New Boston got chosen again,
New
too,
Boston did
right?
as well. Yes, they did.
What are the chances?
So as we approach that testing window, the schools will send out information to families for those that were chosen to participate in that test. So randomly chosen again. I'll also mention that our next meeting is on November 13th at 7 o'clock at the SAU.
Thank you, Wendy.
Great.
All right, SAU board meeting. Shane?
Yep, so we'll be meeting next week, October 12th, 2023, at 6 PM at the SAU.
Perfect. Thank you, Shane. All right, superintendent's report.
Thank you. I wanted to let people know that there's a new program that the New Hampshire Education Department is piloting this year to provide assessment reports to parents using a video platform. So this is something that's, there's a pilot going on for 5th and 8th grade. I saw a sample of this. It's really slick. I was impressed. I think that this would be beneficial and helpful for parents. So we'll see what's going to end up being available after this pilot program. But I think that the test reports can be confusing for people to read. In the video model that they're piloting this year, I thought was really pretty good. So I thought that was something that we can look forward to. Mr. Gross mentioned yet another condo development going into Pinardville. This particular one is 26 units. So we'll have to, again, continue to track and monitor that. Bad news, we were notified from the New Hampshire Education Department. We've had an English language learner consortium grant for decades. And districts were able to do a consortium where multiple districts would go together and that you would submit a grant application. Historically, we've received over $7,000. This year, the department has canceled all consortium grants. So where last year we received a $7,000 grant to support our ELL program, this year it will be zero. So this is just another example of the many challenges that we continue to contend with. In your board packets, you received information
Brian?
from,
They canceled the consortium grant.
they canceled the ability to do a consortium.
Right. Do
So-
we have the opportunity to do it singularly?
We don't. There's like a $10,000 minimum,
Oh.
and we're under that, so we didn't qualify for it.
Okay.
But in the past, we took our 7,000 and 2,000 from another town and 1,000 from somewhere else, and we were able to cobble together that 10 grand, and we lost it. In your packets, there's information on Constitution Day that provided a summary of activities that were done in all schools. If anyone has any questions, I know Mrs. Kohler would be happy to speak to that. The Stop the Bleed kits that were donated, I'd like to recognize the incredible work of Ryan Bump, who has single-handedly pursued these grants. He worked with the Elliott Hospital, and we received 100 of these kits valued at $60 a piece. And I'm just so grateful and appreciative to Ryan for his efforts, and he has really helped us move this project forward, and I'm very appreciative. We already spoke about the night lock system and the presentation that we heard this morning, or this evening, from public comment. With respect to another public comment, the complaint that you all have, I would look to the board and ask if there's anything further you'd like me to do at this point. There were two elements to the complaint, as was shared during public comment. The first piece was the bulletin board. The bulletin board is no longer a factor. It was changed. And the second piece, it was represented that this is a mandatory reading program. It was in fact an optional voluntary reading program. And of that, there were a number of books that parents could choose, and they had to actually order the books themselves. This was not a required book. This was an optional book. So at this point, I think the complaint from my perspective is closed, but I would leave it to the board if you'd like any further action with respect to that.
Go ahead, Dan.
Did we reply to the petitioner what you had just told us?
I
That
did.
it was an optional read and they had to buy the book, and that reply was already done?
I can't remember if that piece of it was given to that particular parent. There have been...
Maybe I got a little more detail.
Yeah,
with my
there have
question.
been a few other people. This has been, the entire program is optional. So this summer reading program, if you don't want to do it, you don't have to. It's all voluntary, and of that, there were something like 30 books that were allowed, and they were all award-winning books. There were books that were recognized. We didn't make the list. It was a list of books that we thought kids would enjoy, and that was what the choice was. At this point, I'll leave it up to the board if you'd like me to do anything further with this.
Okay, and I want to make it very clear, no child is required to read
Correct.
one of these
Any
30
of them.
books. It's all optional.
Correct.
Whether you want to participate and what book you choose to read.
Correct.
Okay.
Anyone else on this subject?
Just
Go ahead,
because
Jay.
my kids haven't gotten there yet with the summer reading program, is there any kind of congratulations to students that actually finished the books, or, is it just, here's a list of books you should want to read, and
Mrs.
that's
Kohler?
it?
Yeah, students have the ability, regardless if they read a book or they actually have a pathway for like writing what you did with your family over the summer. There's different things that you can do to show your learning over the summer. Those students are able to kind of submit their work, and they do like an ice cream party, like they do some prizes that go along with that to be able to encourage kids to participate in learning over the summer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy.
Go ahead, Nicole.
Yeah, I'd like to add, I think the email from Mountain View said that there was something like 60 children out of the school participated in the program over the summer. So frankly, I'd love to see more children participating in the summer reading. Yeah, maybe there's ways we can actually encourage that.
Anyone else need to give direction to Brian? Satisfied with his response? All right, moving on.
So a few things. We received notification from one of our IT security providers that 3 of our student email accounts were compromised by a malware infection called QuackBot. Upon review, we were confirmed that none of our district devices were infected, and the infection likely occurred outside of school and on non-school district accounts. We notified the impacted families and advised them to take some precautionary measures, such as changing their passwords and monitoring their accounts. This past week, we were very excited to receive word from FEMA that there is another round of hazard mitigation grants coming up. If I get excited about this, this is because this is the Big Daddy grant that would allow us to get a generator in this school. This particular hazard mitigation grant has a 75-25% match, and anything that we would pay, any of our services in kind, if we have any staffing, all counts towards our 25%. So I have reached out to the fire chief. We're very interested. He let our FEMA representative know that we're interested in discussing this. I wasn't planning on having a larger presentation about this evening, but I wanted to let you know that this grant has become available again. It's been a number of years since we've been able to potentially apply for this, and this is a pretty big deal to us.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brian, just as a reminder, I know that Mr. Fletcher and the water precinct is also looking for a generator for backup. So don't want to run in the same situation we had last time.
Yeah,
just some additional coordination.
Yes, thank you. I did not know that the water precinct was potentially looking at that. The reason Jared's sharing that is typically the community is only eligible for one grant. So a small grant, say a $5,000 generator grant, counts just the same as a $275,000 huge generator grant. So we want to make sure that we don't lose the opportunity to get 75% paid for of our large generator project, which would power this entire building. It would allow us to move the emergency shelter from Mountain View to here. There are a number of reasons that Mountain View is problematic, but more to come on that. I just wanted to let you know that's pretty exciting for us.
Thanks, Jared.
We had a power loss at Mountain View on September 12th. At Mountain View, the utility pole was struck by lightning at approximately 5:30 in the morning. The lightning struck the pole on the corner of the road next to the access road in the lower fields and took out one of our 3 phases. The building had partial power provided by the backup generator. We worked through it. Randy did a great job. It took overall about an hour and a half. We did not impact school. We opened on time. We didn't take any other action. And after a little while, we were able to get that issue resolved. Continuing the Mountain View facilities-related conversation on Sunday, September 24th, we had a main power issue at Mountain View at, again, 5:30 in the morning. That seems to be the magic time. My phone rang at 6, so we were on it pretty fast. But we had an issue with the air compressor that supplies part of our dry system for our fire suppression system. We lost power in that. There ended up being an issue with pressurizing the sprinkler lines, and as a result, we had dislodged some rust and some other issues, and we had pipes leaking. So the long and short of it is Mrs. Kohler got to spend yet another Sunday at Mountain View cleaning up ceiling tiles and a number of other things. 72 tiles, ceiling tiles were damaged and removed during the leak, but at this point, everything has been fixed. So I would stop there and ask if there are any other questions that I can answer for the board.
I don't see any.
Thank you.
That's it?
That's it.
All right.
I have a question for Ryan.
Yeah.
Do you know if our 4th graders are participating in the I Voted sticker program the Secretary of State put out?
In fact, we're going to be talking about that at our principals meeting tomorrow.
Excellent. Thank you.
I was very excited, Mr. Cloutier. We had one of your colleagues come and speak to the superintendent from the Secretary of State's office.
Did not know that.
I was convinced they were going to tell me the date of the primary. I was holding out. I'm going to finally get it when I saw the agenda, but no, they wanted to talk about 4th graders voting, which again, great program. But I want the date.
All right, so moving on, there is no old business, so new business, we're gonna go back to the course approval. So Jerry, do you have a question?
Got a question.
Yes.
And Wendy, you might not be able to answer this. For the new systems, especially for IT and Python, are we going to have the ability to use things like GitHub or GitLab as part of this? Like I said, I wasn't expecting you to answer it.
We'd be happy to bring that question to Mr. Bourget.
Yeah, as he presents hopefully Wednesday, but that's one of the things, for those of you that...
GitHub?
GitHub, G-I-T-H-U-B, and
Okay.
GitLab. The reason why this is important, as most of you know, I lead the entire internship for my sector at the defense contractor. This is something that we're always hiring interns for, is Python and network technologies, mobile technologies, cloud-based technologies. This is huge. And this would put people onto a path that would just be astronomical with a lot of the retirements that is coming on from our silver tsunami. Not just for my company, but for the industry. So I'm all about this, but GitHub, GitLab, those are always some of the questions on how well people can use it, and if we can use it, because it would require an account and things like that.
So Scott just.
Stephen's not going to be here. So you say GitHub, I'll get the answer tomorrow. so-
GitHub, GitLab, if it's something that they can at least be introduced to, because it's a lot of code sharing, hey, I want to do this. And people put their code up there that they could look at to research and understand, and how they can kind of either consume some of that code, not necessarily to plagiarize, but again, it's just one of those learning management tools that's out there that is a free share.
Was that all your?
That's
You
all I got.
got that?
All right, so,
Just say that GitHub, GitLab, he's good.
so is the board ready to make a decision on this, or do we want to wait until Wednesday?
I read it, I'm good.
All right, well, then I'll entertain a
I'll
motion.
make a motion to approve the, do I do one at a time or do you want to do it all at once?
We do all one, unless somebody has an objection to
Yeah.
them.
So I'll make a motion to approve the new courses as presented during the C&E presentation.
Thank you, Shane.
Second.
Oh, second by Ellen. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous. Thank you. All right, so the next one.
Yeah, next one is for your approval. This is the annual Student Council Conference that happens every year up at Waterville Valley. We've had students and our advisors go every year. This is an overnight trip on November 8th and November 9th. So we would be asking for your approval for the overnight field trip.
Move to approve.
By Ellen, do I have a second?
Second.
By Caroline, any discussion? Go ahead, Dan.
They have their own transportation, I'm presuming, because we don't have buses. So
Correct.
I just wanted to.
Correct.
Yeah, thanks,
Thank you.
Dan. Anyone else? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous. Thank you. All right, so tonight,
Question,
yes.
just, Brian, did we ever resolve the one with Mr. DeRocher and his, did he send anything? Because,
So we did, but his, I put his request off.
Okay, I
So
just
I
wanted
didn't
to-
receive the material, and he didn't have an urgency. I think he's got time. We'll bring that, his request to a future
Okay,
meeting.
gotcha.
Thank you, though.
All right, so there is a list of first reads. We're not doing anything on them tonight. Read through them. If you have any questions, they'll come at the next board meeting. And then school staffing.
So for notifications only, we have a long-term substitute. I would again extend my continued appreciation to Karen St. Clair, who is a retired teacher, one of the many wonderful retired teachers that continue to help us out. She continues to do long-term subbing for us and is a wonderful teacher, so I'm so appreciative. Again, notification, we have a whole batch of student observers coming from St. Anselm College and the continued collaboration with Bartlett. For your approval this evening, we have a teacher resignation of Karen Bowden-Gurley.
All right, so we'll do that one first.
Move to approve.
By Ellen, do I have a second?
Second.
By Caroline. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous. Go ahead.
Thank you. We have a co-curricular nomination. This is a volunteer of Matt Wiley for boys soccer. Matt Wiley might sound like a name that's familiar. He was our girls varsity coach for a number of years. So Matt is a known entity, known soccer guy, and thank you for volunteering with us.
Move to approve.
By Ellen, do I have a second?
Second.
By Shane. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous. All right, go on.
And lastly, this is the list of co-curricular non-sports nominations. I'm hoping you don't want me to read this whole list, but this includes chess, robotics, art, yearbook, video production, select choir, jazz band, orchestra, student government, destination imagination, and drama.
Are these all staff members?
No.
No.
Nope, they're not.
Okay. I move to approve.
By Ellen, do I have a second?
Second.
By Nicole. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous.
So
Yes.
the-
Oh, wait, no, Jared.
Heather, just because you moved back past it real quick.
I did, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay, it's okay, I wasn't quick enough. Teacher resignations, I know that as part of our collective bargaining agreement, we have a clawback clause for people that don't fulfill their contracts. Have we been successful in doing anything along those lines?
So I would probably want to have that conversation with the board in non-public.
Okay.
But I would say in general,
In general.
I don't let people out of their contracts until we have a replacement for them. Again, there are lots of unique circumstances that go into that, but in general, I won't let people out of their contract. If you sign a contract, you're with us.
Yeah, and I was asking generally,
Yeah.
just to see if that provision has assisted us with getting back some of the costs that we need to replace those individuals.
Well, what it's certainly done is, in New Hampshire, there's kind of a very old agreement between New Hampshire superintendents that we won't poach people from one another, and that after July 1st, that there's always a conversation between the superintendents about if someone's looking to leave one district, go to another district, and usually we're able to work out timelines. Sometimes if someone's moving out of the area altogether, it's a little different, but generally, we're able to do okay with that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jared. Okay, go on. Oh, Dan?
If I may just jump back, for the first read policies, could you indicate when our next interim meeting will be? Because we're meeting so often, I just wanted to make it clear that it probably won't be
Won't be for a bit.
in the normal
Our
next
next
meeting.
school board meeting would be the 16th, so we'll see how, because,
That'll be the middle meeting for
yeah,
this.
yeah. Thank you, Dan.
And one other piece on staffing, at the bottom on the agenda, it says, "Other facilities request to convert part-time Mountain View Middle School position to full-time calendar year." I'm not bringing that to you this evening. So at this point, I'm going to hold on that.
Okay. All right, so is that it?
That's it? Thank you.
All right. Other business that may legally come before the meeting? All right, seeing none, we have
Move to adjourn?
no non-public, right?
Nope, no non-public.
No non-public. All right, perfect, yes. Motion to adjourn by Ellen. Do I have a second? Second. By Caroline. All those in favor say aye. Aye. I'm not going to ask who's opposing. We will see you all Wednesday, 6 p.m. Not sure.